You were right on that. You analyzed the situation going into the Hillary Clinton elections, and you were right. You said she wasn't going to win, and you laid out to us why she wouldn't win. Tried to get Bush to say something, which he didn't. He didn't say anything until Trump won. Then he congratulated him, so he was playing his cards close to his chest. But
for one being a representing a man for Uptown TV, you understand?
Thank you so much for joining us inside of the Africa Forum this morning. I know I said I wasn't going to talk much, and then I talked for an hour. And no, I don't have any voice. I'm going to go live to the phone lines where my brother Kwame Pianke is standing by. I think Kwame is who we have on the line. Kwame, as you know, is an engineer. He's a geopolitical scholar and analyst and a Pan-African scholar. Kwame, good morning. Greetings, my brother.
Good morning. Greetings, Kabu. How are you this morning?
Boy, Kwame, I have a throat problem, but you would never know that. How are you doing?
Sounds good. Very, very husky voice. Very husky voice. Sounds like the singer Carmen McRae. She had Jamaican parents, by the way. Her parents were Jamaican.
Yes, true. You know, Kwame, you're the best. You're good for this space. Thank you so much, my brother. Kwame, I wanted to kick things off with you this morning because, of course, we're gonna spend some time looking at the geopolitical issues again as they impact us as Africans in the diaspora, in the Caribbean, in the region, and so on. You're in the United States, I'm in Jamaica, and our listeners are from the 7 continents. But obviously, the last week you were on the U.S. elections. Let me once again say to you that I know it's weird to say congratulations, but yeah, congratulations, because the analysis coming from you was spot on. And I'm going to go a bit ahead to say you analyze the situation leading into the Obama elections. You were right on that. You analyze the situation going into the Hillary Clinton elections, and you were right. You said she wasn't going to win, and you laid out to us why she wouldn't win. And then you did that last week for us again. As a matter of fact, I remember asking you distinctly, because you said to us last week that for Kamala Harris to win this election, she's going to have to do well in the battleground states, and she's going to have to win. I think you said 5 of 7. If my memory.
Yeah, I said all of the Great Lakes states she would have to win. All the
okay.
Great Lakes states she would have to win.
And
she had pulled up.
Yes, go ahead.
In Sunbelt states. Yeah.
Yes, and I asked you then what was the likelihood of her winning those, and you said she wouldn't win them. You were right.
Yes.
Yeah. You said she wasn't going to win. Last week you said she wasn't going to win. You were right.
Yes, I was.
And so I want to look again at why. Because she didn't just not win. This was a landslide for Donald Trump. Why?
Yeah, almost on the Reagan level, Reagan-Mondale level. I mean, it was almost that bad of a landslide, and so much so that even California turned right. They approved a tough on crime bill. They got rid of a quote unquote progressive prosecutor. The Bronx in New York, surprisingly, I think 35 or 40% of the people in the Bronx voted for Trump. I mean, it's strange times, very strange times.
Very strange time. Kwame, how do you think the Democratic Party's shift, because we saw that shift towards a more centrist or more conservative policies, how do you think that impacted the outcome, the relationship with the progressive voters and the outcome of the elections?
Yeah, the Democrats have become the Republican Party. And that started under Bill Clinton. And I remember I did some minor work on Jesse Jackson's campaign. I held up a placard in 84, and I did a little bit of minor work in 88. And I saw behind the curtain. I didn't like what I was seeing during that campaign. A little bit behind the curtain.
Yeah.
And but what happened was, as a result of the Mondale loss in 1984, which seems like the television networks called within an hour of the polls closing. at the time. There was something formed called the Democratic Leadership Committee, which was Al Gore, another guy named Al Frum, and obviously Bill Clinton was part of it. And their whole term was to eliminate the Democrats dependent on special interests, which was code for black people and labor unions. And essentially it moved the Democratic Party rightward. And then come in 1992, when Clinton's elected, he basically kicked the ball across the goal line for NAFTA, which basically was one of the final nails in the coffin for deindustrializing the United States. And that gutted the Great Lakes states, the Midwest, Western Pennsylvania, even parts north of Philadelphia, and so on and so forth. So you could say a lot of this loss was part of that. And then there were neocons in the formation of the Democratic Leadership Committee, and a lot of those neocons went into the Clinton administration. And then what you saw with the Democratic Party, they ran out the truly progressive voices in the party. And there are people who I really admired, like Gus Savage. They ran him out of the party and replaced him with a Rhodes Scholar named Mel Reynolds, who was then run out because he had sexual relations with a 13-year-old campaign worker, a girl who was a 13-year-old campaign worker. And then he was replaced by Jesse Jackson Jr., who was caught in corruption in that same district. And then he inconveniently had a nervous breakdown when he was caught. Then they ran out Cynthia McKinney. They got rid of people like Ron Dellums. They got rid of people like Dennis Kucinich, Mike Gravel, and even the controversial Jim Traficant, who was from Youngstown, Ohio, who opposed, the U.S.'s funding of Israel, were all run out of the party. And they were replaced by these corporate Democratic types who bore allegiance to Wall Street and the national security complex.
And then there's the RFK factor.
Yes, but before we get to RFK, I'm going to tell you the major own goal that the Kamala Harris campaign did was having Liz Cheney around, right? And if you know, there was a lot of anger towards the Bushes among white people, and I'll tell you this, where I live in Oakland County in the Detroit area, the adjacent county, you have Wayne County to the south, you have Macomb County to the east, and Macomb County is always credited with electing Ronald Reagan, the Reagan Democrats there. And Macomb County was so traumatized by the Bush Cheney regime, they voted for Obama. And if you go into like some of the northern parts of Macomb County, those are some very hardcore white people. That's one of the places in Detroit where I'll get a middle finger if I'm driving up there on a constant basis when I'm driving up there, basically. And so for Kamala Harris to bring in Liz Cheney, that was hated by a lot of people, and offer her as a moderation compared to Trump, that has completely backfired. So go back to RFK Jr.
No. Before I'm going to come there shortly, but just to underscore what you just said, because one of the things you've spoken about from time to time is the Republicanization of the Democratic Party, and I suppose this whole Bush. Well, they tried to get Bush to say something, which he didn't. He didn't say anything until Trump won. Then he congratulated him, so he was playing his cards close to his chest. But the Cheney factor. So the question I want to ask from that, because I tried to do the research on this and I had my own finding, but I'm not trusting it 100% until I dig a bit deeper, was to check to see if those who voted for Harris were for Trump. Sorry, those who voted for Trump were Republicans, and those who did, and whether or not Harris, the extent to which she suffered from the Democrats not going out to vote.
I think everything is flipped. The Democratic coalition, and people like to talk about this. The Democrats have been this, multiracial coalition, so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. The basis of the Democratic Party were the hard hats, the the construction workers, the hardcore union workers, all that sort of, and skilled trades. And those are the people who voted for Trump. So that Democratic coalition is really at Trump's base now. Rhetorically speaking, the Democrats in the past rhetorically have claimed to be anti-war, even though the record isn't the case. If you look at Vietnam, et cetera, right? But now Trump has taken up that anti-war mantle, and that appeals to a lot of people. I mean, in fact, I was driving through one community in suburban Detroit, it's a very rich community, a very affluent community. What's it called, Birmingham? And I saw a sign there, hippies for Trump. Of all things, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so,
that is.
So I think everything is kind of flipped now, because of the Democratic Party's Republicanization.
I know. All right, so let's go to RFK, and then I want to come forward to talk about. We hear lots of mud, people just throwing everything and hoping some things stick, and there's some groups who are getting lots of backlash, and I want to talk about those, and also to look at how other groups have voted or not. But let me take the break, and then we'll come back. We'll talk about RFK and look at those questions. Pan-African analyst Kwame Pianke is on the phone lines with us. This program, as far as I know, might have been the only program in Jamaica to predict that Kamala Harris would not have won the elections, and that through Kwame Pianke and earlier through Biggie and myself. I can't wait for Biggie to come in because we had already predicted that ourselves. But it's an interesting situation. But
you all must have made a lot of enemies last week then too.
Yes, and do you know that leading up into the election, so we got a lot of abuse, right? I got a lot of abuse just because of how I dealt with, in the same way we got the abuse for Obama, right? When we talked about what he was not going to do. You were right on that also. But, we understand that it comes with the territory. So let us look at RFK and how he was treated by the Democratic Party and the extent to which this played into
yes, and I would say the seeds of this loss go back to the Bernie. This leads into RFK, so follow me for a second.
Yes.
Goes to the Bernie Sanders campaign in 2016, and there was the head of the DNC, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, did everything to make sure Bernie Sanders did not win the nomination. He won Michigan, in fact, during 2016, and there was a lawsuit. There were two things that happened. One, Democratic Party operative started leaking things to Wikipedia, showing that the Democratic Party rigged the process. A lot of people think the leaker was Seth Rich, who was subsequently murdered, right? And then there was a process server that was working for a law firm on behalf of Bernie Sanders named Sean Lucas. And they served the lawsuit against the DNC, and he was subsequently murdered. He died mysteriously, put it that way, under very mysterious circumstances. And then what happened is the result of the lawsuit was that the Democratic National Committee was ruled as a private organization, and they can conduct their campaigns any way they want, even in an undemocratic manner. And so this led to 2020, when Bernie was running again. The polls initially had him up in Michigan. Strangely, he then lost, and then Obama convinced the other candidates to drop out and support Biden. Right? And then now we go to 2024. Biden's lingering around. Again, they pushed RFK out of the primary process. They said any vote for RFK will not be counted in the primary process. And then, obviously, they replaced Biden with Kamala, who was coronated and did not have to run against anybody. Ironically, Obama withheld his endorsement of Kamala because he wanted some sort of quick primary before the convention. And some other Democratic Party operatives, James Carville, who was the Clinton strategist, said the same thing. In fact, he posted something yesterday, and he was very angry at the way this whole thing was handled. And so the results of the election did not have a true competition. And two, Kamala, when she ran in 2020 or 2019, she didn't even make the Iowa caucus. She was that unpopular among the Democrats, including those in California. Right, so you picked an unpopular candidate to run again. So this was just a disaster in the making all the way around.
Why were the polls so off? I know I'm wondering if people even believed their own stupidity when they were doing the polls, because a lot of this was just straight blind deliberateness.
Yes, I think the polls are entertainment. And so basically the polls you see on CNN and MSNBC, Fox to a certain extent, and CBS and ABC, those are public polls. When I say public, those are pollsters who are not paid by any candidate for their information, right? The polls that got it right, the three polls that were the most accurate, Rasmussen, Trafalgar, and Atlas International, they actually contract their services out to candidates to be paid. They contract their service out to candidates, and the candidates can use those polls as actionable information. So you can't, any poll that's by some of the other groups, you really got to take with a grain of salt. The Reuters, the Quinnipiacs, those of that nature. And again, part of it is entertainment. Part of it is to gin up the base of those in the Democratic Party. But again, those polls can't be taken seriously.
To what extent do you think that Twitter, X, and Elon Musk played into the kind of a momentum that Trump picked up along the way, and the youth vote that seemed to have gone his way?
Yeah, I think Elon Musk gave a outlet for the disaffected Trump reporters who've been kicked off of others social platforms like Facebook, et cetera, et cetera. So it gave them a voice and it gave them a role to commiserate with each other. I think the youth, what's interesting, I think it's not so much Twitter, but access to the internet, even though, the internet is greatly censored from what it was, say, 14, 16 years ago, it gave them a chance to research policy. And I think when the youth started researching policy, whether it be in Gaza or economic policy and so on and so forth, if they didn't vote for if they didn't vote for Trump, they sat out. Right?
Now, as you mentioned, Trump has been touting his son Barron as the one who led the social media policy for the election. And I suppose he did, because we were following and saw what he was doing. I think it was brilliant. It is true that it was pretty well done. And Elon Musk just became a caricature of himself, and there was no censorship throughout the entire thing. It was hard for me to stay on, but I did stay on, and I stayed on in the middle of the Republicanness, and it was frightening. And this is one of the things that I talk about a lot, Kwame, that we are fed, especially here in Jamaica, with internet and all, we're fed a steady diet of liberal BS on a daily basis, whether it is CNN or MSNBC or ABC, those channels, those network channels and cable network channels, they are literally the PR arm of the Democratic Party. And so I think this is for Jamaicans. This is where so many Jamaicans get trapped into thinking that Kamala Harris was doing so well. For others of us who were not doing the CNN and the ABCs and so on, we had an entire different picture. And thank you for putting me on to Rasmussen. An entire different picture of what people were saying, how they were thinking, whether it was InfoWars, to endorse a candidate. It was obvious that something was pretty different from how people were.
And there's some good left-leaning publications like Consortium News, like Naked Capitalism. If you go on, if you go on the YouTube, there are a couple channels that I would listen to. Hard Lens Media, Due Dissidence, and even though he's a comedian, he does a pretty good job of reporting you Jimmy Dore. Right, and so when you're using those perspectives, and they actually cite primary data and articles, it's a different perspective. And me personally, I stopped watching the television news years ago. I around the second Iraq War, I just basically had it at this point. And then and I think I finally checked out when MSNBC fired Phil Donahue. Bless his soul. That guy was just a great journalist. But so you have to. So in my journey here, you have to be able to read sources and view sources that use primary data as their sources. The networks like CNN and ABC and MSNBC and Fox, to a certain extent, use a lot of innuendo and stuff that can't be verified. So you have to be able to verify that. And if I'm correct, I think the news division of ABC is part of Disney's entertainment division.
Yeah, the entire thing, that entire thing is owned by two people at the most. That entire news network in the United States, whether it is Rupert Murdoch or just the whole Disney Warner.
Disney, and CNN's now owned by Liberty Media, which is owned by John Malone. Yeah, I expect CNN to lunge rightward, because that's John Malone's political.
They did try. They did try and come right back. But
they did. I think now they have ample justification to go rightward. That's why I suspect CNN is going to go. But keep going.
Yes. Yeah. Last week, I'd asked you whether or not the Gaza question would play into. Because by that time we decided that she was going to lose, and that whether or not she would lose on that question. You said not only that question, of course, and we've looked at some of the others. But can we look at that Gaza question? You raised it earlier. To what extent did that play?
The Arab community in Michigan, the largest enclave is in Dearborn, Michigan, which is just west of Detroit. It's adjacent to Detroit, just west. And they voted for Trump 46%. They put 20-something%, I believe, for Jill Stein, I believe, and the rest was for Kamala Harris, right? And so, that's a flip from 4 years ago where they voted, say, 80% for Joe Biden. So, and I believe Kamala Harris lost the campaign because her first trip after the convention, she went to Michigan. There were, and I think I said this last week, there were Arab protesters at Metropolitan Detroit Airport. And and as they're protesting, she very dismissively said, if you want Donald Trump elected, that's fine. I am speaking now. And to me, that's when her campaign ended. It was aborted before it started, basically. And then Bill Clinton came in and justified the killing of Palestinians a week before the election, which was basically the nail in the coffin.
Thank you for sending that to me. Bill Clinton, that was straight madness. Bill Clinton is a seasoned politician, and that would have been deliberate. And the extent to which he wanted her to win, I question it just listening to that speech.
Yeah, we can talk to that about 2 seconds. But keep on going. Yes, keep on going.
No, you go right ahead. Go right ahead because spend some time on that.
Kamala Harris is a creature of the Clintons. When she first ran, when she was considering running in 2017, Hillary gave her donors, right? She had a big meeting in the Hamptons and got access to Hillary's donors. And then, there was a big article earlier this year where, Hillary Clinton talks to Kamala every day. A lot of Kamala's advisors were Clinton advisors, right? So I found it very interesting that there's two things that Clinton said. Like when he made some speech in Georgia where, I think it was Georgia, where he basically said that the Democrats didn't properly vet the immigrants coming in, and the reason we're getting immigrants here into this country is because the population growth won't support the economy, right? And then he comes and makes that speech in Muskegon. So yes, if you didn't know better, you think they were sabotaging.
I think he did. I think it was deliberate. It had to be deliberate. It can't be so stupid. So that was deliberate because he's not mad. He not have dementia, as far as we know. So I want to look at Ilhan Omar and Tlaib, because Tlaib was the one who demonstrated when Netanyahu visited the United States a few weeks ago, and he addressed Congress. She sat there. Did she actually? I think she held up a sign, but she sat in protest.
Yeah.
And talking about genocide. And then we have Ilhan Omar, who is very vocal anti sending more weapons to Israel and pro-Palestinian in terms of standing up for the people of Palestine. And these two...
Yeah, she's vocal, but she kind of supports military funding. I don't know specifically about Gaza, but she kind of talks out of both sides of her mouth. But
but specifically about Gaza, because I follow her online, and so she speaks out against it on Gaza. But what I found interesting is that, so I checked to see what their numbers were, and they seem to have carried good numbers. So it seemed to me as if those...
Yeah, Rashida Tlaib won her district by 70-something%. She has 70% of the vote. So if you look, people are claiming Arabs and black people and black men are misogynistic, right? Mm-hmm. But Rashida Tlaib, her district used to be, I don't know if you're familiar with John Conyers. He was a long-time congressman. Mm-hmm. Yes, and she basically took over his district after he was scandalized out of office. And so her district includes Detroit, it includes Dearborn, it includes Dearborn Heights. So Detroit, it includes, black sections of Detroit, Southfield, which is a suburb, a black suburb. It includes Dearborn Heights, Dearborn, which are Arab, Inkster, which is black, and she won 70% of the vote, right? And she outperformed Kamala Harris by almost 10,000 votes.
How are we to analyze this? What's your thinking on this? Because this, to me, there's a much bigger picture here, because she's failing. Where they are, outperforming her by leaps and bounds. But these are people who are pretty vocal against Israel's genocide in Gaza.
Yes. Yeah, and it's going to be interesting if AIPAC, they tried to run somebody against her this year, and that failed miserably, right? And let's put it this way, the Arabs have a lot of political power in not just Dearborn and Dearborn Heights and those places, but in black towns like Detroit. In fact, Arabs, even though Detroit is still majority black, even though it's being gentrified, and the Arab population within the city itself is relatively small. I say relatively. Arabs have more political power than black people in Detroit because of economics, right? Mm-hmm. And even in the town of Inkster, which is a black town, that was created for Ford's black employees. Initially, Dearborn was created for the white employees, and Inkster was created for the black employees. In fact, up until a few years ago, black people could not live in Dearborn, even though that's Ford Motor Company's headquarters. You could work in Dearborn, but you couldn't live in Dearborn. Mm-hmm. But that being said, the Arabs now have gained economic control of Inkster, even though it's a black city council. So they're very politically powerful. Mm-hmm. And so it'll be a hard time unseating Rashida Tlaib, who's Palestinian, from that district, even though AIPAC's trying to throw a bunch of money, even though they may attempt to scandalize her in the next few years, right? And so and again, I think what happened at the end of the day, it's not a problem with whether Kamala was a woman or she was, a black woman, quote unquote. The problem is that the problem was specifically with Kamala Harris and the Biden administration that people had. It's a candidate problem.
It's a candidate problem. At the same time, in just listening to some of the commentary, people have turned against themselves, and we see the demonization, for example, of black men. Help us to understand how they're breaking things down like this, and why.
Yeah, because 53% of white women voted for Trump, right? We have to say, but they're not attacking white women, and I think it comes back to the plantation mentality among the Democrats. And a lot of times I half jokingly, and I'm really serious when I say it, the Democratic Party is the party of Albert Pike. If you know anything about Albert Pike, he was a big-time Freemason in the 1800s and the founder of the KKK and one of the founders of the Democratic Party. And they have never, to me, deep down, left their roots when it comes to that, right? And so I was watching a segment of Morning Joe. I just saw that on YouTube, where the host Joe Scarborough had to barely restrain using the N-word out of his mouth in his disdain for 20% of black men or 24% of black men voting for Trump. And unfortunately, the corrupt Al Sharpton was nodding his head agreeing with him. Mm-hmm. And let me tell you about Joe Scarborough. He is so right-wing, even though a lot of black people watch MSNBC, think he's liberal. He was too right-wing for Newt Gingrich when he was in the Republican Party. Mm-hmm. And let's not talk about his wife, Mika Brzezinski, whose father authored a lot of papers that weaponized the Bretton Woods institutions against black and brown countries. And Jamaica was Brzezinski's first test case.
Of course.
In 1970.
Yes. I wrote a poem about him when I was old enough to write poetry. But what I find interesting is that even now as we speak, we see these stories coming out, to the extent to which how widespread it is. But this backlash against black men, black women too, and black youth on college campuses and so on. I don't know how widespread that is, but I see the liberal media playing that up a lot. Whereas, as you point out, white women did not vote for Kamala, even though they had white women for Kamala and all of that. I was telling all my friends, that white women, in the same way they dealt with feminism, so that black women had to walk away and find womanism, that they would not, and they would not choose, when they walk into the ballot area, they would not choose Kamala over their white men, as they did in slavery. This is a very same...
And white women were very open in talking to me about what they were not going to vote for her. Very open. I mean, so sometimes in life, I think too many people, if the lens of your world comes through MSNBC and social media, it's a false view of the world. You actually have to listen and talk to people. Yes. And sometimes it's good to keep your mouth shut, because that way you garner information.
You learn more. That's true.
Right.
That's true.
And so, the white women are very clear. And I knew they weren't going to vote for her. And then, I had certain relatives say, well, the abortion issue, they're going to come out the abortion issue. That's a failure to understand what happened with that whole decision, which overturned Roe versus Wade. It sent it back to the states. So in states where abortion was free access, it wasn't an issue. Mm-hmm. Right? So they had and then even in states where abortion was limited access, like Missouri, the people in Missouri voted for Trump and then overturned the restrictive abortion measures in a ballot initiative.
Exactly.
Right?
And they were voting, and places where the people were voting down ballot, where that was on the and issues like those were on the ballot, that people were voting, the other way. What I find for me, the minute Melania Trump came out with her book and said, I do not agree with my husband on abortion and Roe v. Wade and so on, she gave permission. She was saying it was a code to white women to say, wink, 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 wink. This is out there, and they're talking about that. But here I am. And I'm standing by him. I'm laughing and smiling, even if I'm getting $250,000 to do this. But here I am. I do not agree with him. And I think that was a signal to white women to say, oh, no, we vote with Melania. I mean, it made sense. All right, let me take a break. I want to come back and talk about the validation of black women, because I know you are concerned about that aspect. And then you also said last week when I asked you about, I can't remember the question, but you said you weren't even concerned about that question that I raised. You were concerned about the mental health of people afterwards. So let me take a break and come back with those two. We look back at the American election, the elections held in the United States last week, Thursday. And through our Pan-African lenses and our geopolitical lenses, we are looking at what happened, and then towards the end of this conversation, to reiterate what we said last week, Kwame, which was, it doesn't matter who won. It don't matter who won this election. For African people, U.S. foreign policy means the very same thing. It don't matter who is in for us. And so we're underscoring that, reminding our listeners that this is where we stand on the issue. We don't have a horse in the race.
The only difference is that under Trump, U.S. foreign policy is going to be more transactional, less ideological.
Yeah. And that
that's going to... That might be so they're not going to be pushing as many social issues.
Yeah. That might be
but it's going to be more transactional.
That might be the better option.
Yeah.
So it sounds like the way it sounds, but it is what it is, and we deal with the isness of things in this space. I know that on the backside of this, people are talking about how American women felt let down, and that this was Kamala was a validation, and if she had won, this would have been a validation for black women. And I know that there's a serious mental health situation there now, because I'm watching people just melting down and bawling and talking all kinds of stuff. Your own perspective on that?
Well, I'm going to tell you my journey with this, right? You know, when I was in college, what people in Jamaica call university, it was a very hostile atmosphere. And that time in the 80s, all the campuses were having some major protests because of a lot of the racial stuff. And so, you know, and even though you would have good relationships with white people, there were times that obviously they want to talk to you on campus, and that didn't really bother me. When I first started working, you know, you'd be in a meeting with somebody, that person you're in a meeting with would absolutely ignore you down the hall. And it would bother me because you know, I would say, well, did I do something wrong? Because always that fear of being fired, especially early on in your career. Mm-hmm. As I got on to later in my career, that didn't bother me as much, even so much so I was pulled into a performance review, which performance reviews are humiliation rituals, by the way. But, I mean, I was pulled into a performance review, and I was told, well, you know, it bothers people that you don't say hi to them in the halls. And I had to tell my supervisor and his manager, I said, I say hi to people who make eye contact with me. Mm-hmm. If you're going to avert eye contact with me, I'm not saying anything to you. Mm-hmm. So that goes back to say that if you're looking for a friend, look in the mirror, to repeat what John Henry Clark said. Yes. And that's both collectively and individually. You cannot look to other people for validation, or it's going to drive you crazy, right? Yes. And, you know, in a lot of instances in work, a lot of times the only people that would talk to me were the janitorial staff and the secretaries, right? Because they were black, or they were very working class whites, or things of that nature. And so, and again, it shows that if you're a classist, that also is a mental issue. And so that's going to lead to further mental decline. Keep on going.
And so, Kwame, I cannot, and I've not been doing this. Let me ask you where you stand on this, because I really find it difficult to get into conversations with anyone in looking at what happened in the U.S. as to whether she lost because she was a woman or lost because she was black. Because I don't think that balances out everything else that was wrong with this entire campaign that she ran.
I just repeated what Rashida Tlaib's numbers were, right? Alyssa Slotkin used to be in the CIA, won the senatorial race, and she's a Democrat here in Michigan. I mean, she's a woman, right? And let's look at the history of black women representatives, from Shirley Chisholm to Cynthia McKinney to Barbara Jordan to black mayors like Muriel down in Atlanta. You have that's not Muriel in Atlanta. Keisha Hank Bottoms in Atlanta. Muriel's in D.C. You had mayor, black woman mayor in New Orleans, and so on. So basically, that whole trope doesn't stand mustard.
I agree.
Again, this is back to the economy. I think to a certain extent, some black men and some black women were offended by Kamala Harris's prosecutorial record, which was very problematic, right? And let's not forget, this is also, I think this Democratic defeat, the season of defeat, was in the 1994 crime bill, which was authored by Joe Biden. And, of course, Bill Clinton promoted it. But when Bill Clinton announced his campaign in 1991, he announced it at the founding place of the KKK in Stone Mountain. And if you look at the picture, this picture is in Michelle Alexander's book. He had a bunch of black prisoners behind him. Right? You can look at that picture when he announced his campaign. Yeah. And then plus the Sister Soldier moment. So again, this has been building up for a long time in the community. Yeah. And so again, she was her past record in California did not help her in terms of having an enthusiastic black turnout.
What I want to spend a minute looking at is bearing that in mind. So for many, the Democrats are the ones who are least racist. This is how a lot of people see this because this is how they have been sold. It's packaged this way, and I'm not saying it is. They're just as racist, if not more, than anybody else. But this is how it's packaged, right? They're least racist, and they're more. Obviously, the policies are more liberal, so they are the better option. But so that if under Trump, who's obviously won now. There is going to be more racism. Help me to understand this because my own thinking on this is a little bit different.
Yeah, the record doesn't bear that out. Like, for instance, police brutality went up under the Biden-Harris administration. It just wasn't reported. There were no major protests because it wasn't being encouraged by the press to have Black Lives Matter protests, right? But police and Biden signed a huge police funding bill that further militarized the police departments, right? If you go back and look at history, recent history, it was the Democratic Party that started COINTELPRO under Kennedy, right? Under JFK. And then the Civil Rights Bill doesn't pass without support of Republicans because the Dixiecrats, the Southern Democrats, were not going to support it. And so I mean, the history. The Democrats do a good job of promoting themselves as this egalitarian group. And also, legitimately speaking, there were some Democratic representatives, some who I just mentioned earlier, who were legitimately for the best interests of our people, right? And that helped. But again, the party leadership opposed them. And then, ironically, affirmative action was started by the Republicans in the 1960s. A lot of people don't know that. There's a book called Affirmative Action Ironies. And they talk about how Nixon promoted affirmative action in an attempt to split blacks off from the Democratic Party to kind of counteract the effects of the political effects of the Civil Rights Bill and the Voting Rights Act.
But now we're hearing about DEI from the Republican Party and
now we're hearing about DEI
and wokeism and all of that.
Exactly. And I told one of my good friends had a conversation about 4 years ago, and I said, I said, you watch. Black women are not the primary beneficiaries of DEI, just like black men weren't the beneficiaries of affirmative action. It's been white women. But black women are going to become the boogie woman, like black men became the boogie man of affirmative action, and they're going to pay the price. And so said, so done. A lot of these DEI vice presidents are getting fired within the past year or so. It's going to be interesting to see how many black faces, especially black female faces, that you'll see in the media in the wake of this election, right? It'll be interesting if MSNBC keeps a lot of their roster, right? But yeah, black women are going to pay the price, even though black women did not tangibly benefit from DEI. And I'll take another example here. University of Michigan has one of the largest DEI offices out of any university in the state of Michigan, and their black enrollment is so much less than it was in the 1980s, about half. I don't think the black enrollment is 3%. But yeah, they're touting all this DEI stuff.
What I'm hoping that will come out of this, because the Democrats are so good at camouflaging their racism, and obviously the Republicans are more open with their racism, which is the same racism, that the policies, whether it's in education or in health or those policies that are so discriminatory against black people in particular, that they will be dealt with in a different way. Because I heard Trump in an interview, and I don't trust anything William say. I'm just saying that I heard him making some comments along those lines, but also interestingly on immigration, outlining what turns out to be DACA. At the end of the day, this is to say, he's going to be looking at things individually along those. So whether it's education, so you get rid of the Board of Is it the Board of Education? You get rid of, or the ministry, we would say, and so you decentralize education,
which to me is beneficial to black people. And the reason I say that is that this whole No Child Left Behind thing that Bush implemented, a Republican implemented, was one of the worst things that happened to education because it tied the teachers' hands. They were teaching the kids to these standardized tests. and the kids aren't learning anything substantial as a result, right? The math skills have gone downhill. In particular, scientific skills have gone downhill. And to me, if you decentralize education, it's been proven that black children thrive under homeschooling. Absolutely thrive. Jawanza Kunjufu's done a whole bunch of things about this. And the reason I know something about this, I was the vice president of the Black Parents Network in my kids' school system. So I was trying to give the parents strategies to improve our academic performance. So even if you're in the public schools, you have to act like a homeschooler towards your children, right? So it would give us a little bit more flexibility in terms of educational options. You know, even though the intent isn't necessarily for our good, we have to be able to take advantage of these policies when they come in for our own good.
And I know, Kwame, that you also has been a facilitator in the Rites of Passage program for boys as a member of the Bammers Club at the African Center Charter School.
Which no longer exists, by the way, yeah.
Yeah, well, there you go. So charter. So your own thinking on charter schools now? How?
Charter schools. My children happen to go to a very good charter school, but the charter schools are basically garbage. My wife had, during COVID, unfortunately, she got laid off from her position as a librarian. You know, she's since recovered and back in those positions, but she taught at charter schools, and the teacher-to-student ratio is very bad. The curriculum is very bad. The students aren't learning. The charter schools are basically taking the taxpayer money and profiting off of it and not teaching the students and not giving them the facilities and resources to teach. So charter schools are a disaster.
You know, there's just so much to discuss, and I know we're running out of time, but I want to look further afield to look at what are you hearing so far from some of the global spaces we mentioned last week: China, Russia. Who else do we have out there? Possibly
the
India.
Taliban. The Taliban. I want to start with
The Taliban, yes.
Yeah. Funny enough, they credited Trump with ending the Afghan war, even though it was Biden who pulled out. That's very interesting to me, right? And they expect to be recognized under Trump, right? Trump has proposed a 800-mile DMZ for Ukraine, using UK and European troops and not U.S. troops. I think it's going to fall. I think the Russians are kind of looking at that with rolled eyes, but that's what he proposed. China says they're better prepared for Trump this time. They're going to have some export controls on the raw materials and some tariffs and against U.S. agricultural goods. But then they're going to have a huge stimulus package to protect their economy from the tariffs. So that means there's going to be less Chinese money going out to the Caribbean, I would think, and Africa, I think, as a result. And Iran is kind of interesting, too. I know few Iranians have been accused for a Trump assassination attempt. I don't know how true that one is.
Iran, it is a lie, and the Democrats are pushing that lie because they know that the Republicans, and especially since Trump won, because they know Trump is going to come in and find the truth of that. So what they're doing is it's disinformation. So they're getting that lie out there before. If anybody tried to assassinate Trump, it was the Democrats.
Yeah, it was all white men. Yeah. It was all white men that tried to assassinate Trump. And then let's not forget that, well, and I wouldn't just say the Democrats. I think there's a speculation that I think there may have been a foreign country which Jamaicans are very familiar with that may have been involved in it too. But we'll leave that one alone.
Let's leave it. Let's leave it. But they're not going to get us with this Iran thing to pull Iran into this nuclear war that Netanyahu is dying to fight.
That will never happen. And the reason it will never happen, one, Iran is the biggest supplier of Chinese oil, and that would start a world war, right? Two, if you were reading some reports weeks ago, the Pentagon leaked Israel's plans to attack Iran to give Iran the advantage, right? The Pentagon doesn't want this war.
Right.
And so I don't think that's going to be the case. I think the war against Iran is going to be more economic. Their currency's been collapsing precipitously the past couple of weeks in anticipation of a Trump victory, and I think this is just a negotiate. And Trump is supported by a lot of hedge funds.
Well, let's talk about that before you go, because not just hedge fund, but do you think about this trillionaire situation behind Kamala and behind Trump. What's your own thinking on how the billionaires have lined up behind these two people?
Yeah, that one is a little bit hard for me to discern because these trillionaires who lined up behind Trump were diehard Democratic supporters, with the exception of Peter Thiel. However, Peter Thiel's right-hand man was what's his name, Alex Karp, was a big funder.
But he's also sorry, Cohen, but he's also a partner with Vance, isn't he, Peter Thiel? They're partners.
Yes, he is. And Rumble is Vance's platform, right? And then number two, Vance's senatorial campaign was also financed by Eric Schmidt, the Google CEO, who was a big-time Democratic Party supporter who also supported Kamala, right? So they're playing, as always has been done, they're playing both sides.
You know what I'm wondering, Kwame? You know what I'm wondering? Because if you remember during COVID, right, we had the lockdown and it was a global reset. And so we're on the other side of a global reset. But the other side of a global reset is what Elon Musk and his partners, including Peter Thiel, who is a partner of Elon Musk also, what they are doing. And listen to Bezos. So Bezos didn't endorse Kamala. He would have, but he's going to be on that side. Because there's a new world, or a new digital world order. Did you see?
Yeah.
Do you see what's happening at Mar-a-Lago? The
robot dogs starting Mar-a-Lago.
Okay.
Yeah, Trump is talking about using a digital wall for the border wall as opposed to a physical wall. Trump has really come out in support of cryptocurrencies. Particularly, he doesn't say CBDCs because the Trump supporters think that's centralized digital currency, but he wants to use the Bitcoin to buttress the U.S. dollar. So we're back to this, right? We're talking about digital IDs. This is all down Elon Musk and Peter Thiel's and Eric Schmidt's wheelhouse.
And transhumanism and life on Mars. And so this is really, this is ushering, they're all lined up and ready to take positions, because Elon Musk has already given himself a position, and Trump says a star is born. Did you see Trump's his acceptance speech at 3:12 in the morning, the day after election? I
didn't see the whole. I saw part of his special speech where he talked about he has a broad multiracial coalition. I saw that part.
Right. He also said, acknowledge Elon Musk, and he said, Elon, a star is born, and that says a lot. I don't think these two are going to get along. I don't think they can get along. But I think that the greater picture is the EV cars, the digital technologies, the transhumanism, the global reset in action under this Republican government. This is
there are those here who think Trump is going to get rid of the EV mandates, right? There are research and development departments here in Detroit in the auto industry who are doing high fives at Trump's election, right? And so, but to me, hasn't publicly stated that. So I don't know how
Elon on his flank.
Yeah, I don't know how he's going to do that and still get along with Elon Musk unless he leaves certain subsidies specifically for Tesla, and people might cry unfair, but at the same time, the investments of the other U.S. auto manufacturers have been disastrous when it's come to EV, and I think they would rather just cut those investments out and walk away from them, because somehow Elon Musk has the first mover advantage when it comes to that, and also Elon Musk is close to Xi Jinping.
Yes,
right. So how do you balance that with Trump's aggressive rhetoric when it comes to China? So it's going to be kind of interesting.
Well, Trump is aggressive. His rhetoric is aggressive, but he wants to be friends with Xi Jinping. Also, Russia. Elon, I understand, was on the call with the Ukraine call, and there's this thing now that he's talking to Putin every day and so on. So there is something there. A lot of South Africans from the apartheid era, South Africa, are behind Trump also. And so that's
and I didn't realize Botha was one of Botha's the foreign minister Botha. One of his grandsons is behind Trump. What's his name? Rolf Botha?
Yeah, Bolas.
I haven't totally read the article. Yes. I heard that on a podcast.
Yes, Bolas. Bolas, whose father is a lord, whose dad is in the House of Lords in England. Who's married to Tiffany?
That's possible. Yeah, that I don't know. I'm sorry about that, but I know there's a Botha that supports Trump, who's a Silicon Valley investor.
Oh, Botha.
Right. So this is
Botha.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Botha. Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of that I find interesting as well, where these South Africans have lined up behind Trump. But that's not to let the Democratic Party off the hook when it comes to South Africa. And I would suggest people go get the book South Africa Incorporated, that talks about the apartheid government's links to both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. In fact, one of the major ones back in the day that they were linked to was a guy named Felix Rohatyn, who supported Jesse Jackson's campaign, and a guy named Maurice Templesman, who was Jacqueline Kennedy's paramour for years, right? So both parties are guilty of this, if you ask me. But now Trump is very upfront with the South Africans in his among his supporters.
This is pretty interesting. Jamaica, we're totally out of time. Jamaican people are more concerned here, a lot of them with immigration issues. I'm telling my people who are calling me that more people have been deported to Jamaica in the last 3 months than ever before, if you check the thing. Not only that, nobody...
Under Biden.
Under Biden. And Obama did the very same thing, too. So, you know, we spent some time looking at the issues coming out of the U.S. election from a geopolitical perspective and a Pan-African perspective. And I know that it sounds like a contradiction, but we know what we're saying around here. And we also had our journalist on the ground in New York, attorney at law and broadcaster, journalist, senior producer, Ian Forrest was on Long Island and gave us a quick insight last week into what he was seeing on the ground there. Ian, are you with us? Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. So looking back, Ian, at last week, of course, the conversation we had, one of the things you said to me was that just going through, you saw so many Trump paraphernalia, and you made a note of that. And I said to you, but that is interesting because it would suggest a kind of a momentum for him. I know he didn't win New York, but is there any, can you see any context to that now? Does it make sense, or were we way off mark?
Well, the funny thing about it is
for
that,
New York, I'm talking.
In this particular area, there was this lovely battle between the Democratic candidate Laura Gillen and Mr. D'Esposito, the Republican candidate. One had lost to the other, with D'Esposito winning before. Now she has reversed that trend and is back as the winner. Now, that said, in 4 seats that they were supposed to win here, or the Democrats tried to win here, they got 2 of them. And so, in a sense, it makes it very interesting for the House conversation. But even as we're looking at that, the whole national conversation suggests that even in places that were traditionally blue or Democratic, the margins for them have reduced significantly or concerningly so. So, you know, what I was seeing was not an anomaly or something that we would say, you know, no, they were totally wrong. It seemed to suggest, you know, people did this ticket splitting thing where they could vote one way for the presidential candidate and another way on the ground. You know, it has this feeling where, as I listened to our colleague earlier, you know, it's a 1 and 0. You're either right or you're wrong. The degree to which you're right or the degree to which you're wrong, no, I guess becomes the conversation. But you're either going to be right or wrong. And I think so many people are in this state of hand-wringing now as to why they were wrong. And really looking again, you know, to the neighbors to wonder what it is you're seeing that they're not seeing, and vice versa.
What are some of the issues that they're raising in New York in terms of the answers to the question of how come, why were we wrong about this on this?
You know, I think I don't know that there's any real answer to that yet. You know, certainly you are puzzled as to how you see things breaking. There are some people who feel that in total, black men weren't going to be going for Vice President Harris. Then another feeling shows you that they really didn't shift out that much, depending on which poll you're looking, where you're looking at. Some people will say, they really broke for Trump. You can't understand why. And then a more aggregate picture tells you they really didn't move all that much. And But the community that seems to be the one that people are focusing a lot on, with some degree of just not being able to understand it, is the Latino community, where overwhelmingly they seem to have gone for Trump.
So that is obviously a question, and we're obviously not just in New York, but nationally and internationally, globally, people are raising this question of the Latino vote. Is it much different from what it was before? Because I think, as you said, as you break things down, numbers are clearer.
That now becomes something, life seems to put up all these research questions, this whole business of study. Let us really dive deep into what happened, You would say to yourself, and we've been seeing this from 2004 thereabouts, when I really started to, in a sense, pay attention to this. That whole immigration question, in 2003-4, you're talking about that whole drumbeat against war, and you're saying, how can we vote for a warmonger? But we did. Women, the issues of challenge to women were on the cards at the time, and then you say to yourself, but women broke for the warmonger because essentially he gave them a feeling safe, and then you heard that. But
put things in perspective, because the biggest warmonger right now for the last umpteen years is a Harris Biden team, though, because the genocide, regardless of what happened outside and inside, this genocide that has been underway against the people of Palestine, this is being carried out by the President Biden, not by anybody else.
Too, we are students of our own industry, this media, yes? And so the framing of issues becomes a very interesting thing to watch. If you follow all of the quote-unquote established media, this is not any part of the real conversation. We want to make it know about economics. We can see clearly in Michigan that people who had a vested interest in what was happening in the Middle East decided they couldn't vote for what seemed to be the safer, more palatable choice, and went instead for who seemed to be finish the job. How do you square that?
But Biden is the one who's saying finish the job. You say, Ian, I don't understand what you're saying here this morning, Because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris,
yes,
they have been presiding over a genocide in Palestine that we have since what's the term would them have when they tried to wipe them off of the face of the earth decades ago, that we have not seen anything like this in recent times anywhere on the face of the earth.
No,
this is Biden and Harris have to own this. They can't put it off on anybody else.
No. Really can't. But I'm just saying that if you look at the framing of the issue, they're not now saying, except when you talk about the Arab community in Michigan and these places, one of the things people have to contend with is, did Democrats show up? And if they say Democrats didn't show up, then the question could be why. But the established media isn't necessarily saying, and possibly people couldn't show up because they couldn't vote for a ticket that essentially supported any regime that dealt with apartheid and genocide. And if you raise these conversations, then we have to go deeper into what the narrative wasn't talking about. And so, in a sense, the media has to hold itself to account for not giving credence to what the real issues were that people were looking at.
And, and when you say media now, because this, and we're two media people now, trained media people, so let us talk about this as like when they go at the people in school and work at the BBC and so on. because I have been ruminating on this in a very, very serious way. So that the mainstream media and the mainstream alternative media, which has become which is becoming a liberal space that is totally out of whack. Everything with the CNNs and the ABCs and the MSNBCs and so on and those, they have now become the PR arm for the pharmaceutical companies, the war machines, the just as Donald Trump would call him, the deep state. And he's right to say that. I'm not quite sure what he's going to do when he come in, but we know that when he was there before, he didn't start no war, and he tried to end the wars. So we must deal with the isness of things and not how the liberal media is trying to frame it for us. Because this is a kind of a programming that has our people in a tizzy right now. You're thinking on how the liberal media might be becoming, as Elon Musk is pointing out this morning, irrelevant, and people are looking on the backside of this to other news sources and other media outlets for the truth.
I tell you the quandary that we're in right now, yes? We have a song that says, every N is a star, right? And so when you find yourself on the outs, you're watching the media sons who couldn't stay at MSNBC, pushed out through the door. Now he has his own kind of thing. I'm watching the Owen Joneses. Al Jazeera is a big part of my feed now, yeah? And you're looking at these other sources. And this is, shall we say, on the quote-unquote liberal side. Then there are the people who look at the Alex Jones and the Candace Owens types of alternatives to the media.
Tucker Carlson and them. But,
yeah.
Because and it's the same thing, isn't it? So one is far left and one is far right. And so where is the public sphere? This is where people like Elon Musk has found a vacuum and is filling it, whether you agree with how it is being done, yes or no, doing a phenomenal job. This is my thinking.
So then part of what is happening then is, so fake news becomes the scene in 2016, and it has run for these last 8 to 10 years, yes? And possibly it was there before that, this distrust of the quote-unquote established media. So it creates an opportunity, a vacuum then, for alternative sources to come in. Yes. So it feels like reading Miguel Street. I don't even remember about the story of that guy who would not believe nothing he read would not believe anything he read in the papers. We now have a situation where you so distrust the quote-unquote established media, you take on who essentially A, don't have the training, B, don't have the discipline, don't have the ethics nor the integrity, but essentially have a perspective to push. And the more eyes you get on your thing, is the richer you become. So the money drives the motive.
Can I ask you, Ian, if we are beyond where we are now in this dystopic world? Do you, to what extent do you think we are beyond the training in terms of journalism and therefore the performative expectations that come with being trained at a particular university or a particular media house and so on? To what extent have we moved beyond that? Because when you can sit down or lie down in your bed and turn on TikTok and just talk to the entire world and say, what can go so? This is a whole different world that we're living in. So to what extent is the mainstream media literally writing itself out of credibility, because you're sticking with the talking points of government, and government has bought into all different kinds of wars and owned by pharmaceutical companies and, neoliberal agendas, then, if you will, as opposed to those who are just coming with the raw truth, like what happened in Amsterdam. You see that reporting coming out of Amsterdam, read the football match and the Israelis or the football hooligans. Did you see that news
I
overnight?
knew, in a sense, we had to touch that. When I saw the story break, to me, it didn't make any sense why these supporters would be attacked. Then I saw this, well, I would call him young. He strikes me as the conflicted guy who is a lifelong Labour supporter. Owen Jones is who I'm talking about, who is totally disgusted by the support of his party and his country for this genocide. So he goes off on that. And he wants to see participation in the political process, but is disgusted by how his own side performs in this kind of a thing. So, in a sense, it is standing up for the just humanity in a big kind of way, trying to tell truth. So when you see the Times, for example, gives you the story of what happened in Amsterdam from a particular perspective, and you say this perspective makes no sense.
Exactly.
You can drive a hole to the story, and this is not the character of the journalism you expect from the Times.
And yes, it is credible newspapers. They are talking about credible news, so-called credible mainstream media, and they didn't withdraw them until citizen journalism took over, where people who were in Amsterdam overnight had films, pictures and videos of these Israeli football hooligans pulling down Palestinian flags and just creating mayhem in Amsterdam. So until it was the citizen journalism that made a lie of mainstream journalism.
So the fact, in a sense, then the citizen. So he brought it to my awareness. The total refusal to observe that minute of silence for the Spanish flood victims.
Right.
The tearing down of the flags.
Right.
Who actually got beaten? So in a sense, can you trust your lying eyes to see what is being shown to you? That kind of a thing. So then he gets me to go look at Middle Eastern Eye, to go look at Al Jazeera, to see this contrasted narrative, and then you watch the Western, shall we say, pro-Western, pro-genocide media, then bringing one story, having all the facts, if they did any research, to say this is not the truth. And when we find out it's not the truth, do we draw it back? Up to yesterday, I was seeing in
they have withdrawn.
No,
a lot of them have withdrawn because all the mainstream media picked it up, and most of them have taken down up to the point when I checked this morning. Some are still up, but most of them are down, and those that are still up are not so strident in talking. They've removed the word pogrom, for example, a certain name pogrom it pronounced, and so it is less strident in terms of blaming the people of the Netherlands for causing this chaos at a football match against Israel, because Netanyahu said that he was sending out the Mossad and IDF, and everybody was going to invade Netherlands for what I don't know. This is where he was now with, for him, warmonger self, until citizen journalism stepped in. And good thing that you had platforms like X, where it was allowed
So we're in a real quandary then, in a sense where even though at the top of X is Musk with his own agenda, his disinformation agenda, his his own interest agenda, which seems to support Trump, that very medium can also be the bulwark against how things, are pushed. So I think we now are in this state where those who we trust almost come under, we must trust but verify.
Trust,
you know what I mean? Even you.
Don't we pass?
Even me.
I think we have passed that stage, Trust but verify. I know it's on our way, but I think we're past
there. Where can we go?
Yeah, because which part you go verify? So listen though. So don't you? So trust Sky, trust BBC, and verify whether or not Israel did bomb up a hospital in Gaza. But Biden come sit down beside Netanyahu, and what did he say? It wasn't Israel. It wasn't one of ours. It wasn't our bomb. Them bomb up themselves, and now they've bombed almost all the hospitals in Gaza, and Biden is silent. So who verified?
I think now one of the things you have this thing that you say, right? History will be your alibi.
History is my alibi, understanding what history is, because history is also a lie.
Well, you go write it, right?
Yeah.
So no, we take the long view. We take the long view, and in a sense, the quote-unquote conspiracy theorist at a particular time, as we watch the narrative over time,
Yes.
we then recognize that, a lie can live for however long, but the truth eventually comes out. So then I think it behooves us to take a much more critical eye to anything we're seeing right now. The medium exists now. This is the part, I guess, where the quote-unquote trained journalist or the person who is taking that view to know that what you see now, again, something I hear you say, the appearance of things. Mm-hmm. You don't always work with what is shown to you right now, because easily what we're talking about is smoke and mirrors, propaganda. Mm-hmm. Those who have the money can control the narrative, are controlling the narrative, but under the whole of that, will some commission of inquiry will come out, something will come out.
because Serbia, and I'm going far back, Sierra Leone, Charles Taylor, and them. We saw how Netanyahu rebuffed the ICC. With all these structures, ICC and Human Rights Council and United Nations, all these structures they are falling because under the genocide in Gaza, they are proving to be impotent, worthless. And because all of these structures are falling, truth is a casualty. And this is why in this space I think that, and I've said it many times, we are in a post-truth world, and it is true. We need to know what our truth is and ride it like a horse. What about Africa? Or how do you see Africa in all of this? Because here you have Starlink that, has gone, it's in Jamaica now, obviously in Africa, and there are so many other satellite systems in Africa for communication. And the digital currency and all of that, but all of so much of this owned by these very same oligarchs that we're talking about, and not necessarily, to a large extent, not necessarily by Africans. I'll give you a final word on that. Your thoughts?
Well, you mentioned the university and what these university students protest. How they pass the tests. I go back to protest. How are we setting up our children to receive truth, to push back against narratives that don't essentially work for them? I think that stiffening of spine, what it is we're all about. We look at so many of the freedom fighters who have died, and do we now say, child, I want to keep you safe? You know it's a lie, but you have to go along with it because it's so you're going to live. How do our children, generations of freedom fighters, revolutionaries, is that still a relevant concept? And I think as long as oppression exists, people will have to fight against that. And in fighting against that, then essentially we're going to define the kind of world we want to see. And lie is not working for anybody. Lie is really not working for everybody. No matter how nice it look right now, it certainly won't work for you in the long run.
But who defines what is a lie? That's the question. Who defines what is a lie? And who defines what is truth?
Somehow you just going to know, in the experience of things, it is just going to prove itself that way. And I think when it hits, just as it will hit over these 4 years, in this doom and gloom time that we're facing ourselves right now, the guy hasn't even taken office yet. But January 2025 going forward, I think a lot of people will stare themselves in the face and ask, how did we make this choice?
But how did we choose? How did they make the choice of Biden, who's sitting over a genocide in Gaza? Whose truth is that? Whose truth is that?
In 2020, there was another tyranny on us, the death and the destruction, and the response to it that the incumbent was making, essentially to set it up that Biden became the better choice. Who could have known the same guy who railed against Reagan and his support for apartheid South Africa could be the guy who's standing as that defender of genocide and apartheid in another place?
And that's the thing.
How could we know?
That's the thing. Netanyahu's truth is ruling the world right now. Or we need somebody to come tell Netanyahu say him lie. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ian.
But you know what I want to say?
Yeah.
Hope, Kabu. That is, it springs eternal, you know. I saw
in the human breast, man never is but always to be blessed. Let me finish it because...
What's that saying?
You know, so I must not quote half a poem for my program because I will finish it.
We never forget at the Sunday school part where we finish the things, you know, but I know the concept.
It's literature at high school, it's literature at St. Mary High. Hope springs eternal in the human breast. Man never is but always to be blessed. Anyway, go ahead.
Yes, so this is a time for a pause, for people who love truth, for people who love righteousness, for people who love right. You know, when you see the people who don't necessarily do that, getting ahead, moving ahead, then the whole question can become, do you follow them into what seems to be that syrupy, beautiful reality, or do you stand up knowing what you know and advance that?
Thank you. So I have to go, Ian, because I have cash part, but thank you so much. Well said. I take the point and we'll continue. I hope that I'll be able to talk to you many times from New York before you come back. And topics as we go now to the phone lines to speak with Dr. Ajamu Nagwaya. And we're going to be looking this morning with Dr. Ajamu on a vexing issue for Jamaica here, which is the extent to which toxic products are being used in the agricultural sector. But obviously, he can't speak for the agricultural sector. He's going to be speaking on behalf of farmers and wannabe farmers like ourselves and just general Jamaicans who are using some of these products and the dangers inherent. Also, some of the cases that are ongoing right now across the world. We have been talking about these for years. For example, Roundup is a very, very serious issue. And I think this is where we're coming back to again, because the Jamaican government is still importing that and farmers are still using that. It's poisoning people. My father was poisoned by Roundup. It's an interesting thing because I was here marching from Otrius Town Square to Roaring River and back and leading all of the town, speaking on my box, you know, standing on my box literally and speaking from the town squares. And my father was using Roundup and was poisoned by it, and I had no idea. This is how serious this is. Anyway, so our brother, Dr. Ajamu, joining me on the phone lines. My brother Ajamu, how are you doing?
Hi, good morning, Sister Kabu. How are you doing? I'm pretty good.
I am well. I'm well if you two are well. I wanted to get your I would never plan for it, but since we've been talking about it all morning,
right.
Your quick response and analysis in a minute or two of what went down in America with the elections last week, Thursday into Friday.
Well, nothing significant happened. What actually has taken place is that we had the election of someone who's less hypocritical about his imperialism adventures abroad, especially when it comes to the Middle East. Because if we're looking at foreign policy, the behavior of the Democrats and the Republicans are the same. Mm-hmm. If we look at Palestine, mm-hmm. both of them are supporting Israeli aggression against the Palestinian people, a genocide going on there. Mm-hmm. Only thing is that because the Democratic Party has Arab Americans within its constituency and peace-loving people, mm-hmm. They sometimes give rhetoric that would communicate the impression that they're in favor of people, but they're not. They're totally supportive of Israeli aggression because Israel serves a role in policing the Arabs in the Middle East and in controlling their oil. So there's no difference. And the domestic policy, there's no difference because Kamala Harris was saying, I am a capitalist because she was being accused of being a communist because of the link to her father as a Marxist economist at Princeton.
Yes.
So she made it clear that I am committed to capitalism. Both of them are committed to capitalism at home and abroad. And capitalism is not in favor of those of us who are from the ranks of the sufferers. So nothing has changed because when we look at the Democrats and the Republicans, they're two branches of the same party.
Yes.
They are our class enemies.
Yes.
So we have to build movements to challenge them, to win concessions in terms of economic policies, social programs. But we can't look to the Democrats or the Republicans as solutions to our problem. They're both class enemies.
Exactly.
And that's how we should look at it.
Exactly. And, one thing I didn't mention earlier, but as you're talking, it reminds me of it, with them capitalistic neoliberal agenda that we notice. The Heritage Foundation, which out of which Project 2025 is coming from, is a Margaret Thatcher. It's a Thatcherite organization with people like Niall Gardner out of the U.S. who worked with Margaret Thatcher, who, along with Ronald Reagan, oversaw that whole process of the neoliberal agenda.
Right.
So that it shows you that really both operating, the Lincoln Project might be is the opposite of the Heritage Foundations. It's just two parts to the very same goal.
Right. No, absolutely. It's a similar thing when we think about the two capitalist parties in Jamaica, the People's National Party and Jamaica Labour Party. They're both class enemies of the working class. So when we see entertainers run into conferences of one party or the other and acting as if one will be better than the other, they're committed to the same neoliberal capitalist policies that attack social programs and that put the burden of our well-being and poor families who do have nothing. So we can't look to having better access to education because they believe in defunding education and say people should save their own money and finance their education. And we don't have the money. The wages are so low, we don't have the opportunity to save to finance our education. If we become sick, we don't have any savings. But they will cut funding to public health, forcing us to depend on our own resources, and we don't have it. The charitable sector can't meet the cutback from neoliberal underfunding of hospitals, schools, recreational facilities. They're terrible.
Yes.
But they give the impression through rhetoric that one may be in favor of poor people and the other is not. They're both against us. But the difference between the fox and the wolf is what's represented in parties, especially two-party political system like in the United States or Jamaica. Democrats, Republicans, the PNP and GLP, they're both enemies of the working class. And that's how we should see it.
And talking about enemies of the working class, here's something that we have been fighting for a very long time on this island in Jamaica. We've taken it to the very highest level, and it is still a problem in Jamaica, which is how chemicals are being used in agriculture, the types of chemicals that they're using in agriculture. I want to talk a little bit about that because tell me if as much as you know and can explain to us the current state of the toxic products that are being used in the Jamaican agricultural sector. And I know you yourself are looking at this right now. What inspired you to take this on?
Well, I'm committed to non-chemical farming and a natural way of engaging and producing food because it's just better for us in terms of our health. We don't have poisons coming into our body. But also, it doesn't destroy the very environment that we need, where you're reducing biodiversity in terms of plant life and animal life from using pesticides, but also in terms of human health for farm workers and farmers, and even us as consumers when we think about pesticide residues in the food that we're consuming. So it's just bad all around for the very environment that we need to survive, but also for the people and animals in it. We cannot continue on this path. And because, for example, we're looking at the Jamaican case, it's claimed that Jamaica engaged in an overuse of pesticide, that our use of pesticide in Jamaica is higher than the world average. And this, even the Pesticide Control Authority, a state organization, a Jamaican government organization, they have confirmed that we overuse pesticide in Jamaica. Can you imagine that we're way above the world average in terms of pesticide use?
And the question is, when since? How did that happen?
Well, remember, in the 1960s, we had the Green Revolution, where they started to introduce pesticide in terms of farming. Took on a more industrial model. They have larger farms, so they took away land from poor people, forced them to become agricultural laborers, and have us working in these big farms. And they believe that to meet the need for food, they had to use these chemicals, pesticides, and they had to use chemical fertilizer in order to produce food for this rapidly growing population. So that's what they have talked about. So when we see big farms and we see pesticide use, it's part of that green revolution from the 1960s. In Jamaica, we're importing between 2.7 to 3.5 million kilograms of pesticide every year. And over 50% of that goes to agricultural sector. So they will use pesticide, for other things, for lawns and other things, So, it's a really major problem. And when we consider that we're using pesticide above the world average, it's very dangerous, because what has happened, what they have done to us, especially in the small farming sector, is let us believe that we can't farm without using insecticide, without using fungicide and herbicide. And herbicide is a big thing, because even in terms of controlling weeds, that's what we're not doing. We're using Roundup to control weed and even other dangerous chemicals. And Roundup is classified as one of the highly hazardous pesticides. And all over the world, progressive people have been pushing for eliminating highly hazardous pesticides. And that's the term they use for
Roundup. Do you know what the Jamaican government has said in recent times about Roundup? Because there were national protests led by us. I refer myself. We were leading those protests nationally across the island, and there was a response from the government of Jamaica. I'm not quite sure if you're aware that basically what the then Minister of Agriculture said was that Roundup posed, in my own words, paraphrasing him, posed no danger. And that we would still be importing that into the island. But can you talk to us about how these toxic products affect soil quality, water sources, biodiversity, right, but also the human body, the biology of the human body?
Right. What I should say now, that the work that you have done, you and other people around controlling or eliminating highly hazardous pesticide, I think they have heard. They heard it because in 2022, March 2022, they launched a pesticide research project in Jamaica. The actual name of the project is Pesticide Residue Research, and this is by the Pesticide Control Authority, and it's a government body. So they're looking into the use of pesticides. It's a 2-year project that should end this year or next year. So it's a 2-year project to determine the use and level, determine the level of use of imported pesticide into Jamaica, and also to determine the level of pesticide residue in the environment. Because this same body, the Pesticide Control Authority, between 2009 and 2014, they found 11%. In 11% of the vegetables and fruits that they surveyed, local vegetables and fruits, they found 11% of pesticide residue in it. And that can be dangerous because the buildup of pesticide in our body can affect our hormones, it can contribute to cancer. So this is very real. So when we protest, the times when people say, oh, let's protest, not come out of it. But I think what they did in terms of this pesticide residue project, was a result of the concern raised by you and other people about pesticide use. They're not going to credit you for forcing their hands in doing it. But nonetheless, this is what they're doing. But
let's see. Are you optimistic about what might come out of that?
No, because they've done this abroad. In the imperialist countries where the environmental movement is much more stronger in terms of pushing for changes, they have done similar things. They have done the research, they have done the studies. But remember, they are here. They're in the pockets of the chemical companies. These are the companies that can make donations to election campaign. These are companies that can hire former politicians as consultants. We don't have that type of money as poor people. They listen to these wealthy capitalists, killers of people's dreams and aspirations. So they're not going to do anything to go against that. However, they will act if we build strong social movements to pressure them. So they will concede because they don't want the system to break down. So they will bend a little until we get distracted by something else. Then they take back the gains that we want. This is a tactic that they've used. But it is really dangerous in terms of pesticide in the environment, because pesticide, these are confirmed scientific research outcomes that they have found. It contaminates the air, the soil, groundwater. So even when we use chemical fertilizer, the thing about it was different from using, what they call using like organic method of soil fertility, is that it runs off into a lake. It contaminates aquatic life, so plants and animals their life can be compromised. They don't reproduce as a result of the leaching of pesticide. Not pesticide, but chemical fertilizer into the lake. So, we look at that, so we can have contamination of air, water, and groundwater, soil. So that's dangerous.
All right, hold for me. Let me just take a quick break and come back to that.
Yeah, man.
My brother, Dr. Ajamu Nagwaya, I said a short break, but here we are, 6 or 7 minutes into this whole thing. But here we are. So just to go right to, let me do this. This hour from 9 to 10 is brought to you courtesy of Excelsior Community College, celebrating 50 years of academic excellence. That the hour from 9 to 10 brought to you courtesy of Excelsior Community College, celebrating 50 years of academic excellence. All right. Thank you so much, Excelsior, for coming on board, sponsoring an entire hour. We appreciate that. All right. So, Dr. Ajamu, you were telling me just as we went into the break about how these products like Roundup and the different toxins, the pesticides and so on, these toxic products, how they affect the environment, the water sources, and so on. And one of the things you talk about was also, and you mentioned briefly cancer. Can we go back there a bit? Because there's a lot happening with in other jurisdiction where Roundup, for example, is on trial, and the manufacturers of Roundup have been ordered to pay millions, billions if not, of dollars out to persons who have taken class action suits and others against the producers, the manufacturers of Roundup. But here in Jamaica, these things are coming in, and with the permission of the Ministry of Agriculture, and where the technical people are rather. What do you think is the role of the technical people in properly advising the less technical in the ministry?
Well, Sister Kabu, let me just finish us briefly highlight the effects of pesticide use on the environment.
Yes.
Because we talk about the pollution of air, soil, and groundwater. And groundwater is very important because we use it, we consume it.
Yes.
But also, we have, through pesticide use, they kill beneficial insects. So like wasps, bees, and other beneficial insects that eat the pests that we don't want in our fruits and vegetables or in our plants. pesticide use will wipe out their population.
Yes.
So some of them will become extinct, but also reduce them. So they're not available for us to have protection against the dangerous pests.
Mm-hmm.
We also find pesticide residue may end up in our food, and this has been confirmed by the Pesticides Control Authority here in Jamaica, where from between 2009 to 2014, and of their sample fruits and vegetables, 11% had pesticide residue in them. So this is a reality. We don't make things up. This is the government-owned data that we're calling on.
Mm-hmm.
But they also harm plants and animals in the spring. So when I talk about aquatic pollution, we're talking about our springs or river and sea, pesticide residue going there and destroy the ability of many plants and animals to reproduce. So we're going to have a collapse of plants and animals within the biosphere or within the environment. But also water pollution by pesticide contribute to acid rain. So on top of climate change, I know it's affecting us. These things are very dangerous. But talking about the impact on human health, it's a very, very serious thing. And the funny thing is that the government have access to the data. You do a search and you'll see, they will realize how it's affecting farmers. And it's not just only in Jamaica, but even worldwide in terms of poisoning, through our unintentional poisoning from using pesticides. There's very, like on a global scale, they're saying that, let's see, get the exact figure in terms of the number of people. Like every year from unintentional pesticide poisoning, 11,000 people, get poisoned from using pesticide. And, this is small because they're saying there's underreporting of, pesticide poisoning.
Of course, there's underreporting because, my father was poisoned and, there was, you didn't even have a place to report to because you were told that, okay, it's poison and it's most possibly related to the use of the Roundup. But then where do you go with it from there? And we see
it goes nowhere. And it's affecting farmers and it's also affecting agricultural workers. But since the Green Revolution, just to show you, pesticide has been dangerous, it has been implicated in over 14 million intentional poison, where people commit suicide by using pesticide. And this is since the 1960s. 14 million people have died from intentional pesticide poisoning. So it's something that we really have to organize against. And it's only getting worse because each year we import over 10,000 tons of pesticide into the Caribbean. So it's not just a Jamaican problem, but it's a Caribbean-wide problem that's going on. And
so even when
something we have to organize again.
So even while we talk about, which is we tend to talk about the health and the environmental impacts, there are also economic and social consequences. Help us to understand what those are. And at the end of this, I know I have to wrap one at about 9:15, so I'm just kind of putting you on standby there. But here's the thing. Our government has told us time and time again that this is no problem. I hear you talk about what they set up and so on. This is okay. Regardless of what's happening in Europe, no problem. But there must be some other implications when you talk. After taking us through the environmental impacts and the health impacts on the economy, and we're talking about the social consequences.
Well, it affects us, one, if we're talking about the impact on the health of people, it means that we're going to have a population of people that are sick. For example, with farmers, when they experience poisoning through pesticide use, it means they're not able to contribute. So that affects the level of productivity in the farming sector. And then even the workers are affected. So if you're sick, you get poisoned by pesticide, you're not able to contribute as a worker and earn an income. And we don't live in a society where we have unemployment benefits, like we have in the imperialist countries, that after unemployment, you meet their criteria, you can collect unemployment insurance until you get back to work, or you exceed the period of the benefits period. We don't have that. So we're talking about suffering that's taken in the small farm sector, and also the reduced productivity, because already Jamaica is finding it hard to find agricultural workers. The wages are so poor, the work is terrible, working conditions are terrible. Many people don't want to work in the as agricultural workers. So it will affect our level of productivity at the economic level. I haven't seen any data on the economic impact. You just know that it is impacting us. There may be data out there.
I hope there is. I hope that at UA and NCU and so on, they're doing some of these studies. And what are the agricultural schools that we have? Parsley Gardens used to be. Then I think Elim there. I hope that at the tertiary level, in academia, we see some of those studies coming up. So then one of the things that you always talk about here is the alternative solutions, and you already raised some of those in the space. Right. So let us go to alternatives and solutions.
Well, solutions are always important. They have these pesticides that they call biorationals or biopesticides. They have no negative impact on human health or on the environment. So this is very real, because two UWI professors from the science area, they did a study of the use of biopesticides, and we're talking about organic forms of pesticide. They're not deadly to people, and they're not deadly to the environment. And they found that they were just as effective as the highly hazardous pesticides that are being imported into Jamaica. And this is very crucial, there was no impact on yield. There wasn't a reduction, so it's comparable in terms of using the deadly chemicals that we're using. So where's an alternative? But I suspect that the price of the biopesticides would be higher than the chemical pesticides. So that can become a barrier. So yes, they may be both effective, but already small farmers are strapped when it comes to working capital or cash just to carry out daily or weekly farm activities. So that is an issue in terms of affordability. The good fertilizer, the things that are good, like organic food is more grown food is more expensive than chemically produced food. So that would be a challenge. So, but the issue is that there is alternative in terms of that. My approach in terms of alternative is to use a system approach to providing soil fertility as well as dealing with pests that are in the environment. So my approach is to use what they call a food forest system, where we mimic the structure of a forest. When we look at a forest, the forest doesn't go to farm store to buy fertilizer. It doesn't go out to buy pesticide, because it is a system and it is able to control pests within its environment. We're doing the very same thing. And that's why when we talk about the lack of biodiversity or the reduction in biodiversity by using chemical fertilizer or using these highly hazardous pesticide, we need beneficial insects in the environment. Recently, I went to radar training for dasheen farmers. I don't grow dasheen, but it's the same place I want to meet the other farmers in the community. And the radar person was pointing to a bug called the assassin bug. He said the bug is usually attracted to sorrel plants and also hibiscus. So there may be other plants that attracted. If you use deadly pesticide and wipe out the assassin bug, it makes us more dependent on highly hazardous pesticides or the more expensive biopesticides or biorationals to deal with pests out there. So when we talk about the negative effect of chemical pesticide, this is what it will do. So my approach is to plant different things that can attract beneficial insects. But we run into a problem in Jamaica is that we don't do enough research and in documenting the names of the plants that we have that attract specific insects. So that you can plant these flowers around so they can bring insects. They're dependent on the research that has taken place in imperialist North America and Europe.
I would like to see the work that Dr. Clark, Nigel Clark's wife, right? Who was, isn't this what she used to do at UWI? I'm not quite sure if she's still there, but this is naming plants. That's her forte, as far as I know. And
right.
it would be good to see her research. And if she has anything along those lines, I think I'll go take a look at that. But you talk about that also, and I noticed that the Scientific Research Council, they're hosting a series of activities this month, because this is what Scientific Research Council month or something, Science and Technology Month. And what would you like to see coming out of that? Because I'm looking at the theme, which is harnessing innovation in the application of science and technology for national development. Within the context of what we're talking about here, what would you like to see coming out of the Scientific Research Council, if anything?
Well, one thing I would love to see is them prioritizing alternative approaches to agriculture, the non-chemical, the non-industrial, capitalist industrial model of farming, and on a practical level, to start to carry out research, especially when we talk about pesticides, is to identify the plants that we have in Jamaica and what type of insects, beneficial insects they attract, so that when we're doing our farming, we can plant these things. For example, for me, like I plant mint plants and also flowers. I don't know if these flowers attract beneficial insects, but one thing I know, they do attract pollinators. So you put them there because they have beautiful flowers. You hope they will attract it. So you plant those things throughout your farm as a way, but it's just kind of random. It's not like when you're in imperialist North America, Europe, and you know if you put the time, it will attract this type of plant. If you plant tomato and pepper, you know they will attract insects that will protect them against certain pests. Mm-hmm. We need that type of research. So the Scientific Research Council need to lobby the government for them to put the funding in place, and also foundations to put the money in place so that researchers can go out there and start to figure things out. Just like all those two UWI professors were able to do a research project to see how does, biopesticide work in terms of preventing infestation of callaloo and pakchau. And they're saying it's just as effective as the highly hazardous pesticide, and it doesn't result in a reduction in yield. Because that's a big thing for farmers. Don't come and tell us that this is effective, but then it reduces our income.
Yeah, I'm reminded of the two young men, not so young anymore because that was from mid-2000s, who from Stairtown Academy, who developed their own pesticide and insecticide it was, and they won the national competition, and then they went to Canada, and I think that regional competition, they won that also. I remember that I spent months and months and years actually at this program just trying to get the attention of the then government to say, pay some attention, give them the necessary funding that they're going to need now to take it from here. But I haven't heard anything since, and that's quite a while back.
Right, and also what we can do is use YouTube to find information about pesticide solutions, like home-based solutions that we can use. Yes. The baking soda is a very effective ingredient in making home-based pesticides. So there's information out there.
So we can use baking powder on something like the frangipani. You know those worms that turn bug that eat the frangipani flowers? You know them?
No.
I'm going to send some pictures. Go give you. No, they're scary, but and they're plenty. They're pretty too, but they're pretty ugly. And it's just a whole. When they come for the frangipani, nothing is left,
right?
And then they turn into bugs and so on. So I need to know what to get rid of them. What I can use, if baking powder or something like that. But listen,
baking soda.
In some
of the solutions, you can put olive oil or you can put essential oil in it. But just get the mixing level right in terms of measuring what a teaspoon or tablespoon to so much water. So we can do that. But I believe in using the system approach of your whole farming operation is geared towards using natural processes, practices, to make, so you're guarding against it, just as always in the forest.
So this is what it is.
Go in the forest, do you see the leaves eaten up? No, because you have a wide range of plant life, and they attract beneficial insects that will eat the pests. So they're able to keep the pest level, population level under control. And it's the same thing we have to, that's why I'm talking about, we use a food forest system, mimicking the 7 layers that are present in a natural forest in order to provide build soil fertility and also control pest population.
Sister P just sent me a note. Yeah, go ahead. No, go finish your sentence.
Yeah, it's a slower process when when you rebuild them, because we're used to farming where you have 10 acres under, say callaloo, or 10 acres under coconut or banana. The forest is more diverse. When you go in the forest and you see a cluster of trees, you may find 7, and if there are like 10 or 12 trees there, maybe only 2 or 3 of them may be from the same species of plant. You may have 8 to 9 different trees in this an area. That is biodiversity that we find in nature. But we don't see that in farming taking place now, where you look at place now like 4 acres of pumpkin. Pumpkin alone. They're not even doing intercropping where you have pumpkin and corn and peas, and they serve different functions. Just one thing, the pest love that.
It's a kind of, yeah. Sister P, send me this note. She says, I have charts on companion farming and it needs to be taught. Do you know that? Okay. And
and that's what I'm saying. These are research that comes from abroad.
Yeah.
So so we can use them because they will work in our environment. But when you're farming, you see plants out there with pretty colors, and you see bees coming to them, you see other insects, and we don't even know the names of these insects.
Yeah.
They could be beneficial insects. So if we know the name of this plant, what beneficial insects they attract, then we could put them in our farm so that they will protect against, and we would reduce our need for pesticide. And the thing about it, when you do farming and you're using a natural system, what we call weeds, we see some weeds with very pretty flowers, and we see insects on them. Don't know the name of the insects. That's one of the things you realize when you're in the Caribbean. We have, and especially Jamaica, a very diverse population of insects. When you leave Kingston or Spanish Town and you come into the deep country, you see all these insects that sometimes they're frightening. Can you think,
I'm if I tell you. Yeah, it is true. They're beautiful, beautifully ugly. You're afraid of them too. But and this is my thinking of the frangipani worm bug, because they're coming in hundreds or thousands, it look like to me, and then you don't want to kill them because you say, but they must good for something. Like, where are you coming from to just invade me yard like this? And then you're gone. Every year you come and then you're gone around the same time, like Bird Samuel's bird and we have on in veranda in Kingston. But, that's what aside. I'm good. I'm going to wrap now, but let me just one quick word, because we're totally out of time. As a reminder to what we can do in terms of getting rid of Roundup, especially because people are still using it to spray them yard, just to spray them yard.
Education is critical, and we have to realize we have to deal with challenges around these things. For example, in the farming sector, we have a labor shortage among small farmers. Because even sometimes when you want to hire someone to work, sometimes they don't want to work for small farmers. It's crazy. Some people say, look, they don't want to get rich off of them, but they'll go on the big estates, the big capitalist estates, and work for less money than what they would get per day from small farmers, and work for these capitalist big estate plantation owners, but they don't want to work for small farmers, even though they extract a higher wage per day, because they will go and work for $3,000 a day on the big estate, but they don't want to work for $5,000 a day for a small farmer.
There's a need to get rid of a stigma around farming too, and I think a lot of conversation around that, but I haven't seen any pointed intervention to get rid of that stigma, but I know that it has been said many times.
To get rid of this stigma, we need land reform in Jamaica. That's why these clowns that are going around so that they're peddling reparations, they don't want to put any pressure on the government that appointed them to these reparations commission across the Caribbean.
Anytime you talk about reparations, they call it, you must not name call people on the program.
To put land in the hands of small farmers and poor people.
I noticed that you always name call the people who are going around with reparations, which should include myself. So you can't call us clowns. But thank you so much for your input. Well,
me not talk to you.
Well, me hear you.
Me know who me talk about. That these people are grown and have been get appointed by the same Babylonian system that oppresses us, but they can't touch certain subjects and reparation.
We are totally out of time, Ajabo. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you so much, my brother. As usual, and once again, just to say, keep the farming going because you are an example to all of us on this side of the town. Thank you so much.
Good thanks for that.
Right.
Just thanks for the opportunity for reason on a subject.
Yeah. All right. Yes, sister. Dr. Amina Blackwood Meeks.
I love it when you say that.
I know. And I know you're not performing on site.
Good morning, my beloved.
Morning, my dearest.
Yes.
How are you doing?
I'm all right, thanks. And you?
Yes, I'm doing well. I'm not sure why I'm not hearing you so clearly, but it could be my headphone turned down. But anyway, so let me get.
I am hearing you clearly.
Okay, brilliant. Well, I mean, we're coming. I know we're going to talk about an anti-sound splash, and I know I didn't talk to you about. Say, Amina, could you please tell me what you think about the American election that gone? But your
Let us just say that some things we do not think about.
All right, well, let us leave it. Let us leave it then. We're not thinking about it.
No, because the truth is, my sister, the truth is that the world on November 6th was the same that it was on November 5th.
Right.
It's just that our eyes were open.
Yeah, but it's the same November 7, 8, and 9, and 10, and 11, don't it?
Exactly. So
Yes.
the preponderance of evil
Yes.
in the world in which we live. And that at sometimes it is more evident than others. And what does that do? It strengthens our resolve to be on purpose.
Well, I hear you loud and clear. And I'm interrupting you, never quite finish.
Yeah, no, man, go ahead.
Okay. Now, I hear you loud and clear. So, evil before and evil between and evil after.
And so what I'm saying is we are not, I don't know if we will ever be, but people like you and I and our audience are not at this moment so deep in the corridors of power to be able to see and know everything.
True.
But what we are able to see and know, we have to be on purpose in what we do about it.
Right.
How can we be on purpose to hold our elective representatives accountable? How can we be on purpose to say democracy means dialogue with the people? It does not mean you give us a position and say we must vote yes or no. It means that we are part and parcel of how that position is arrived at, how it evolves and how it is pursued. It means that we are on purpose about looking after our children and preventing them from disappearing, so we don't know which corner of the world they've gone to in human trafficking. It means that we are on purpose in how we take care of our elders and sit with them and talk with them about how they survived, what they survived on, and what tools they have to pass on to us to continue to survive and thrive in this space. So it means that we do an audit. We don't throw up our hands.
Yes.
I wish I knew the Toni Morrison famous quote by heart. But in essence, what she's saying is, this is the time when we go to work. We don't have time for despair. We don't have time for fear. We don't have time to be silent. Because whether we are silent or not, them other one are going to do what them want to do.
That is the point.
We have to be able to open our mouth and say, me see you.
Well
and
said.
it don't sit down good.
Thank you so much for that, my sister. And I said before you came on, much earlier this morning, before you wake up, actually, I said, my sister Amina is coming on this morning. And I probably going to ask her, because we're going to talk about Anansi Soundsplash, and I was talking about Aesop fables that we used to read in school and so on. And Aesop is one of us from the community as a black man and so on and so forth. And we say Aesop is the inspirer of the world's greatest mind. So I was talking about the fable that deals with the axe and the trees, where the axe...
Oh, yes, man. The tree, them things, eh? Because him angle come out of one away. We are him a friend.
Yes. So me no want to get you know, I don't want to drag you which part me the right here, but I was talking about, I heard the Prime Minister saying to the nation, on the backside of all these roads that are damaged and so terrible, to understand. And I'm saying that, you know, we are participating in our own harm, in our own misfortune, because every time you ask us for a piece of branch, for makes the axe where you're going to use for chop down for the same tree, we give it to you. So we have to understand. I said the Prime Minister probably needs to define for us what does understanding mean, because right as I don't know, if he says another piece of branch in one for build another axe handle.
And I do not understand. You know why I don't understand? Because I see the road them in a one bad condition before burial.
Exactly.
Me live on a piece of road out here in Morton Park that for 2 years I have been pursuing the responsible agency. Not just writing letters, but sending photographs.
Yes.
To say, look where the road look like.
Yes.
And then just before independence, after 2 years, somebody came and did an estimate and said, but it's not really that agency, it's another agency, but I'm going to send in the estimate. He's going to have to come back and redo the estimate because the liquor hole them just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And we don't seem to understand how a stitch in time saves 9.
Exactly.
So I don't understand. I heard Muta. I refuse to understand. I heard Muta on the radio on his program on Thursday talking about the fact that he might drive past a road into a public thoroughfare, that the road deteriorating over many, many moons, and he's been talking about it, and nobody no come fix it. And then he went into Cherry Gardens, he said, and him see some bad road. And him companion program and say, him never knows a bad road in a Cherry Garden. And the next week when him go them the road, they are fixed.
No, I gotta take my to make laugh, you know. I cannot manage. You know, this so this is So we keep giving the woodsman the wood for make the axe I use for chop down food tree.
Chop down with uncle.
Yes. It is so that is going to take us right now, because I'm saying Anansi Soundsplash and 1 year.
Anansi and Aesop are related.
All right.
Anansi and Aesop are related.
Yes.
You have to do all kinds of research.
Yes.
I have to know how to triangulate.
Yes.
So over the years, I have been researching Aesop. And so I know for a fact that many of the stories that appear as the parables of Christ came from Aesop, who lived 800 years before Christ was born. I know for a fact that Aesop was an Ethiopian. That is why his name Aesop. Can remember how the A and the E used to join up.
Yes.
And he used to be called the Ethiop.
Yeah.
He was enslaved in Greece, and his job was to teach the children of those who enslaved him. So he wasn't a dunce man. A dunce man can't teach nobody nothing.
No.
And so Aesop passed on to them the fables, the stories on which he grew up in Ethiopia. So we is one and the same. And another time we're going to talk about the dream web of the Native Americans and how in Tommy and how the whole of we related, because we are one people who understand that stories are not entertainment in the sense that they're icebreakers and they make you just skin up your teeth and laugh. They are entertainment in the way they engage every aspect of your being, your thinking. I can't find the big word now, where educators love use for thinking. But your thinking, your feeling, your comprehending, and your application. That's what we mean when we say that's a very entertaining story.
Yes.
It leaves me to think, and it has application like the man and the axe for the way we live today. In 2012, when we designed our storytelling festival to celebrate Jamaica 50, and when we rebranded the story as Anansi Soundsplash, and you were there at the very beginning,
of course,
to give us a platform, so we continue to big you up for that.
Yes.
The person who was the head of the National Library of Jamaica, Mrs. Winsome Hudson, delivered a paper because the festival is performances mixed with discussions. And she said, if she had her way and somebody tell her, clear out everything out of the National Library, what would you leave? She would leave the collection of Anansi stories.
Wow.
For their values,
yes,
for their customs, for the way they tell us about our traditions, wedding, 9 nights, baptism, all of that. And I've looked into what Mrs. Hudson had to say, and her paper is published in our book, The Children Ought to Know, which is a publication of papers delivered between 2012 and 2022. So the book came out last year.
Oh, I don't have a copy of that at all. I didn't even know
why you chastise me.
I may say it, you may say it with all accent, with British accent.
I do not know, but I am going to move for rectification.
but you should have known before you said it.
Yes, we're very out of order.
Yes.
So I have looked into the Anansi stories against the background of what Mrs. Hudson taught us at that festival. And when we look at the stories, we see everything in the Sustainable Development Goals. How we're going to care for water. Why is Anansi always by a body of water? Why is Anansi always in the forest? Why are the trees so important? Why is Anansi always going after food? Why is food security so important?
Yes.
And of course, we know that in the African cosmology, food is not just what you put into your belly, but what you put into your head and your spirit. Why is Anansi so concerned about education, about the way we regard our ancestors? All of those are things that we are now pursuing as the Sustainable Development Goals. And we have the tools in our folklore, not just in the Anansi stories, but in the folklore that, once upon a time, folklore was the newspaper.
Yes.
So when we get up and sing, say, I was rafting on the Rio Grande, me and my Uncle Benji, we buck up on one big rock stone and the raft on over, I laugh, somebody, I laugh.
Yes.
And Olive Lewin told me, not just me, other people, she spoke to our group as well, that such a song is about a man who was a banker. She never named him because she said at the time he was still alive. And she now call him name while he's still alive. But him now in his highfalutin self was taking a raft on the Rio Grande into his jacket. Him is not taking out him jacket. So the ho-ho is the people, them laughing. So the way the spirits interrupt and make these lessons so funny, the raft really did turn over.
Yes.
And them see him a splatter in him jacket, C-K-E-T. That's how my mother used to say jacket.
I recognize it because your mother come from St. Mary.
Yes, and so that was their way of spreading the news that look what happened to this man because it was beneath him to take off his jacket.
Yes.
So we have all of those folk songs which carry our history. Recently, I was doing some research on Eldonese Park and came upon some comments that Miss Lou had to make. The National Library of Jamaica is rich in things we don't know, except you go searching for them.
Yes.
And she was able, and it was 3 or 4 weeks ago when I was doing this research, Miss Lou was able to teach me that Dip and Fall Back was written by Slim and Sam.
By
A
who?
comedic, absolutely. Sim and Sam,
Really? Yes, yes.
Yes.
Oh.
But we just say it's in the public domain.
Right,
no.
right.
Miss Lone know who it did belongs to.
Well, look here, at last, look here, you just touch my con because I will not touch my con. That is the wrong thing to say. It's just synchronicity.
I
use
touch your kenke.
because that sounds contrary. But we on the same thing. So I'm going for the English people and something. Synchronicity. Because I was listening to a song. You know Kananga water or Kalanga water?
A kanang. Well, I don't know what is the correct word.
Probably Kananga water. But there's a song by
Yes.
the Ethiopians that somebody sent can give me. My sister, and she said, listen to this song. I'm talking about something about Kananga water.
I think I know this song.
And
yes.
this song there, Hong Kong flu. Hong Kong.
Yes,
Hong Kong flu.
Then the fever. I know it's Hong Kong flu.
Of course, I hear it. I was
Yes.
So no, and then so it had me last night in a whole space, say, well, is it a Bantu word? Where it didn't mean it come from India, and then it's Ethiopian. So I think it is so exciting.
It is.
To discover, and if we can get our young people to kind of rediscover ourselves through the folklore and their Nancy stories and the Ace of
Well,
Fables.
you see, children learn by example.
Yes.
And they have to see that we are excited
True.
about the magic of our folklore.
True.
They have to see how excited we are when COVID-19 come and medicine don't know what to do, and the grandparents call in and say, ginger and turmeric.
There you go.
You know?
Exactly.
That we respect it. So that they will say, well, let me see what really is in this. And that is why we have a Nancy Sound Splash.
All right. And a Nancy Sound Splash is when... thank you very much, Mom, because it's a nice segue. So, you know me and you, if I follow where we're done with, but we never talk about a Nancy Sound Splash.
Yes.
So this is going to be when and where, and tell our people how they can attend.
So we are pursuing the application of storytelling. We've spent the last years or so developing, reestablishing interest in our stories. And we believe that we have achieved that, maybe 90%. People now want to know stories, and people bring stories to us. And so our work plan for the next 5 years is, how do we now say the stories can be applied to who we are and what we do?
Yes.
So last year, our theme was First People. And we used our festival to find out about the first people in Jamaica, find out about the Tainos, find out it's because of the rules they had for playing what they call batey, Batey. I never know how to pronounce it properly, which is a kind of football, which they taught Columbus when Columbus came here, that Columbus carried back to Spain, and every single thing that the Tainos taught them about batey now is in the rules of playing football.
Yeah.
Right? And then we also dug up the story of the first metallurgists in Jamaica who came from Africa, who were out there on a plantation in St. Thomas called Reader's Pen, who make all kind of machinery to be able to do the work a little easier.
And kept England and made England the richest country in the world. Yeah.
The wicked man said, if them people here can make this thing, them are going to make bullets and come after it. Who thinks that?
Yeah.
Who thinks that?
Oh, they think that.
All right. So he mashed up the something them and took the pieces back to England, and those pieces became the foundation of the Industrial Revolution. Look here, man, a long time we are DJing a dance. Long time we are chanting rubber dub.
Yeah, you think we're done. We just come. Yeah.
So that was the application from last year.
Yes.
The application for this year the theme for this year is Find a Nancy, Discover Jamaica. So we're telling stories about heritage sites. And do the children know where these heritage sites are? And could this possibly be where a Nancy lives? So we're going to tell the story about which part of Nancy there. And if you find which part of Nancy there, you're going to be discovering a heritage site.
Yes.
So they are, when
brilliant.
they think of heritage sites, they think of great houses. But what about the school in your community?
Yes.
Who built it? What about the church? Is that a heritage site?
Yes.
What about the Watland building?
What about where the ancestors then bury?
Absolutely. So we don't want people to continue to think that heritage site is only where Martha did live. And Martha, in fact, could not live there except he had our labor and our knowledge and our design and architectural abilities.
Yes.
So when we tell these stories and we find where Anansi is, then we will be discovering a heritage site in Jamaica.
I love that. I mean, I love the sound of it. Every year it gets, I don't know who ideating these things, but it gets more and more innovative. Yes.
In the middle of the night.
Yes.
No, but we mean that.
Yeah, it's true.
That.
I hear that.
Sometimes we are not still. I mean, if only we could be still and take ourselves and we brightness out of it.
Yes.
And things say we are the beginning, the Alpha and Omega.
True.
We will hear what we need to do. And I don't want it to sound easy. It is a continuous process. Because the ego can get in the way. And we have to know when we say, look, man, take for yourself.
Yes.
Make me hear what I want on another level. So
all right. So this is going to be on between November 7. Let me do my thing.
November 17 and 23.
Right.
Some of the events are not public. So, for example, the ambassador of the Embassy of Colombia in Jamaica is bringing us our international storyteller this year.
Nice.
And they are paying for it.
Okay.
We now pay a penny. Katia Gomez is a singer, an actress, and a television host. And she's rated among the best storytellers in Colombia. And she's going to be joining us. So the first activity is going to be all the storytellers and the sponsors, hopefully, meeting with Katia and just getting an understanding of Katia herself and how storytelling is treated where she is.
So this is a closed session?
Yes, but a very important session.
Right. And I see you have Roy Ray on.
Yes, because we tell stories in song.
Yes.
We tell stories in song.
Yes.
Thanks to the Ministry of Culture, we are able to afford Roy Ray and Nazelman for the opening activity on the 19th. Now, since 1998, when we first had the festival in Alikoway, we have been celebrating International Men's Day. So we kind of now said to ourselves, but are we bringing it come to Jamaica? Other people are just discovering it. So every year we mark International Men's Day. This year, International Men's Day coincides with the opening gala. We always open with an activity designed especially for the children. And in this Olympic year, we said, what can we do for International Men's Day? We're going to salute the men who have put Jamaica on the map where athletics and sports are concerned. We would have loved to have Usain Bolt, but Usain Bolt not in Jamaica. But we're going back to the foundation. Who is Arthur Wint? And what did he do? And his daughter, Colleen Wint-Bond, is coming to tell that story. Who is Alan Skill Cole?
Yes.
And where were we in football before Alan Skill Cole and because of Alan Skill Cole? And Alan is coming to tell that story.
Brilliant.
Children, So they can meet and understand that we are because they were.
Yes.
They were.
I mean, I'm cutting in a little because we have just a minute. So maybe give me that minute for kind of just bring it together now.
Go
and
to the Anansi Soundsplash Facebook page and the Anansi Soundsplash website. But I want to say that on Thursday we have our big discussion. And that discussion is hosted at the Edna Manley College and it's called Anansi Goes to College. And
but you know, Anansi for them a boy I go to infant school though.
Anansi go to every school. You're
because,
right.
you know, easy. I swear you're doing, you know. I bet you will get Anansi PhD. I'm watching you, you know. I'm watching you.
And guess what is the topic? And Nancy as the first global citizen.
All right. I love it.
From which part him reach, and they're all over the world.
I love it.
And so Katia will be a discussant.
Yes.
The ambassador herself will be a discussant.
Yes.
And Professor Tunde Bewaji from Nigeria. Yes.
Oh, he's back?
Who has a whole No, he's going to be doing it by Zoom.
Okay.
Who has a whole developed theory about who Nancy is and why he's important and where he has been, will also be on the panel. And that's 2:00 on Thursday, that 21st, which happens to be World Philosophy Day.
Okay.
And so we remind
Nancy is a philosopher.
I'm telling you, man, philosophy in our story and with riddles and with everything.
I love it. All right, is there a cost to go in or we're...
It is free thanks to our sponsors.
As usual.
JTB, Tourism Enhancement Fund, Spanish Court Hotel. CALS is feeding our children on that children's gala. Mm-hmm. Really, we could not do it without. And that is the other thing. Mm-hmm. When we write to somebody and them say, we don't have the money, but we wish you the best. Wish you the best can put on culture.
Goodness. I mean, I go on. Listen, wrap up the thing.
Yes.
I'll stop it.
Wrap it up like this.
Yes.
I want to wrap it up like this. Mm-hmm. Culture is everything that we are.
Yes.
And we need to invest in it. It can't be something we do if we have little extra time. Mm-hmm. It can't be something we do if we have little extra money. It can't be something we do when we have friends coming from abroad and we want them to see a play. Yeah. We have to invest in it because it is part of our internal construct. And without that strong internal construct, we're not going to make no Vision 2030 target. Because we are not going to understand the relationship between how I understand myself, my identity, and my capacity and desire.
And what his vision is. Thank you so much, Dr. Amina Blackwood-Mix.
Bless you, my sister.
Yeah. I love talking to you every year. We and Nancy Sound Splash, me I tell you. And Nancy, I go big in big A. And I college and Nancy there. You know, say, Amina start this thing with Nancy. I go infant school. 2012. And Nancy there college now. I mean, I look at me. I mean, we talk soon.
Yes, what good thing.
You see, big A, we have to go to college and that work, so. Although we graduate already, but that time we go back. She gone. Boy, Nancy gone at college. So, big A. Oh, you know, man?
I am wonderful.
Yeah. So you did, well, I remember the very first thing you said after that. I'm going to go back to the first thing you said. And I put words in your mouth last week, but the very first thing you said after the assassination attempt was that you said, who is he going to beat?
I did say that.
That was a question you posed.
I did.
And I suppose today being the 10th of November, grab your microphone. Today being the 10th of November, you have that answer, eh?
The question has been
answered.
The world has that answer. The world has that answer.
Just checking.
Honestly, I think the Democrats, generally speaking, they ran a poor campaign. Right at the get-go, because remember now, a VP is chosen, a president is elected. And Kamala was selected, not elected by the people. Mm-hmm, so she started out with at a disadvantage because the Democrats didn't get to field their best candidate, I believe, for the whole thing. And I was telling my friends that we're going to use a football analogy real quick, right?
I think we can play football.
If you don't mind.
Yeah, I don't know.
No. So with 5 minutes to go, the coach decides to put you on the field.
Yes.
And
Van Johan Eriksson.
Huh?
I'll give the coach a name.
Right. Right. Decide to put you on.
Yes.
No. When you run onto the field, right? But your side is too low down, right? You're at a disadvantage. Now, everybody knows that if you are too low down, you're going to have to work harder than the person who have you on that tool love, because all you have to do is defend.
Right.
You know we're going to have to work harder to equalize and then go ahead if there's going to be a thing.
Right.
Now, I believe that the disadvantage that she has was, one, being female, and two, being black. Right? And I think these historically, not personally, but historically, this has proven to be the case.
I hear you.
In the American scenario.
I will argue that down to the T, but
no,
time. But I can understand it as a historical disadvantage. I hear the point.
Right.
Yes.
Not anything personally, no.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying historically, this has proven.
Do you think it factored into her losing?
Yes.
I don't think so.
Yes, because there's a poll that
Which
came
poll?
out. No, hold on, no. And I happen to I don't know where you get your news from, but I watch News Nation a lot, and it
Me
is
too.
right. And a lot of persons are saying that Americans are not ready for a female president. There's consistent debates about that, and then you talk to the man in the street.
I've heard it a whole lot.
Right. So make we.
But the argument I'm making is that I don't think that. All right, so take the football analogy and everything into context. All being well, then, and if the campaign was better planned and you didn't run a because you run a Hillary Clinton lost and you run a Hillary Clinton campaign, you know.
No, and exactly. But hold on. We not even reached this yet, right? And what happened is that...
Hold a thought. The hour between 9 and 10 is brought to you courtesy of Excelsior Community College, celebrating 50 years of academic excellence. So we're asking all the Excelsior Community College students to come and listen to Big A now and join my side of the thing.
No. But as I said, right? Historically, this has proven to be the
I understand the history.
No. Let us look at somebody who defeated the odds not too long ago, which was Barack Obama, right? Being black, right? He had to display superior qualities, not just the average, to override, to come back from this tool of deficit. Right, to override the common thinking, you had to be extraordinary in terms of whatever it is that you're bringing to the table.
In other words, equal to the task and then some.
And then exactly equal, and then that's a whole lot more. Equal to the task and then a whole lot more. Now, Barack displayed that with his extraordinary intellect and extraordinary charisma, which, quite honestly, I didn't see coming to the fore. Not to downplay.
What about his campaign? Because he ran an interesting campaign.
No. Of course, but I mean, we don't have all money.
True.
Right. So we
disagree why you hear me coming in and out.
No. The campaign was The campaign was excellent. And what the campaign was doing was a demonstration of the two things that I just highlighted. It had to bring those to the fore, that he was superior in his thinking and he had a personality and a charm that exuded. Now, regardless of how you planned the campaign, those things were front and center. Yeah. They were designed to highlight those qualities.
Stick a spin and let me ask you. Do you think if Biden had run, that Biden would have won? With everything what we know up to the point where him hand it off?
Perhaps not.
He wouldn't have?
No.
You can't say it definitively, but in my thinking...
I don't think so either. I don't think so.
So the Democrats are on the back foot anyway?
Anyway, right. So what really should have happened is that they should have gone through the primaries and, have all the people them debate and them choose the best person and that kind of thing. That is really
and check them arrogance at the gate and stop the war in Gaza.
All of that. all of that. And all of that. No, but not even before we get round to war in Gaza and all of that, right? I think that the essence of almost every political campaign, not only in the US, but here in Jamaica and everywhere else in the world, is that the economy is front and center, right? It is
Yes.
That is really what matters. That is really what matters to everybody everywhere, right?
Yeah. And this is why the JLP in Jamaica has to be very careful if them intend to go back for the 18-year thing, and the PNP has to look at what is happening, because there's this discussion about prosperity, but is just 1% of the population experiencing prosperity? No, well, I am not. So, it's just 1% experiencing that prosperity, and the majority of us down here we see it. We're very much aware of it, like we talked about last week, a piece of land which me and you live in, that piece of that's $30 million for one lot. And we see a lot of young people buying up these lots. So we see the prosperity, but it's just a small percentage that benefiting. And that is where Andrew Holness and the JLP, and also Mark Golding and the PNP, are getting it wrong where the Jamaican people are concerned. The last time, nobody not go vote. And it's going to probably be worse now if them think it's going to be better, because things are worse for us, the bulk of us. And I think this is what hit Kamala Harris too. Right. That you're feeling it in your pocket.
Right. And it wasn't addressed. It wasn't addressed. Not only was your feeling. Right. It was not addressed well. Right. So I think there were just so many things working against the Democratic Party. Why it turned out the way it did.
Well, Andrew says, half agreeing with you, that Andrew Lumsden, Condi Rice said black yes, female no, and she says I'm with her. Literally the same slogan and policies and team as Hillary Clinton. And it's interesting because basically this is what Kamala did run a Hillary Clinton campaign. Down to the show, down to the stage show. And I'm saying, and the celebrity kind of focus, whereas...
There were just so many things that Hillary did that she didn't do either. Facing the tough debates.
She did. Is Trump refused for debate?
No, man, not the head-on debates. I'm talking about the
interviews.
Interviews,
yeah.
Not the debates.
Yeah.
But the interviews, the hardball interviews.
Yes, true.
And that kind of thing. I've also heard criticisms about not being able to speak off the cuff. It is always rehearsed speeches from the teleprompter, which, I mean, on the contrary, you have to beg Trump to stay on script. On the contrary.
He's speaking off the cuff, on the cuff, under the cuff.
Right, on the contrary. Right. And people feel that
sexually assaulting the microphone.
Right. People feel the sincerity when you're able to look away from a script and speak from your heart. And that is.
Did you expect the kind of landslide victory for Trump? Because this is obviously a landslide.
No, I certainly didn't. But it all goes to show or underscore the things that I've mentioned. That is not just one thing go wrong.
Right.
It is many things that went wrong.
Yeah. And this is and that's why you have this worldwide conversation going on still, because everybody have a set here. So I think these are the reasons, and these are because this morning we looked at it through the geopolitical lens to some extent, and so you're looking at them reason there, and then you have people looking now at the racial lens and the gender lens, and everything taken as a whole, is the result that we have. So
that it is.
Yeah. Well, so how Brownstown? Did you go up and calm down the people?
No, I did. I probably need to. I need to. Right. I mean, the connection there are very, very good friends of mine.
Yes.
And we probably just need to huddle and cry together.
Yeah, I think you. Don't wait too long. Don't make the week.
We just need to huddle and cry together.
Yes, but, have a good little ball like the people at MSNDC.
Right.
Yeah. Well, here we are on the other side of it, and enough more things because we're looking. They're about to call once. By the way, you get water yet?
Yes, on Friday night. Finally.
Gee, wow. Anyway, so they're about, and I'm not sure if they can call an election in Jamaica anytime soon now, whether it is legal or illegal, because what has happened to the roads, what happened to the farmlands, what happened to people's homes, and so on. I don't see how you can call an election in the middle of this, but you did call an election in the middle of COVID. Oh, I have a break. Biggie, I have a break. I have to. Biggie, what you doing? You have me here until 6 o'clock. I say I don't take my break. And look at you, make sure.
It's my fault.
It's totally your fault.
Yeah,
thank you so much. What is it that I'm missing? Oh, okay. No, it's your thing, Biggie. But anyway, so you think we'll call an election soon, considering what we see in America?
Well, I don't know. Honestly, I don't even care. Because it never worked out for me one way or the other.
601 because the prosperity.
It never worked out for me one way or the other.
Prosperity on one side. What's the thing on the other side?
I don't know.
Well, none of them will catch me either. Anyway, this is how we're saying goodbye for today as we make way for the big eight side of this Sunday sunshine. The Grammy Awards, the Grammy nominations. We're not talking about that, but they have been done. Are you comfortable? Were you here?
No.
Who should have the money?
To be honest with you, and you have heard me lament about this year after year, is that the Grammys seem to be out of touch with what is happening in the Jamaican space, generally speaking. And
who is left off in your opinion?
Couple of people, including Massacre. I haven't seen. Who else? There are a couple of persons. There's Romy and Virgo.
Do you have to enter your stuff or?
Yes.
Well, maybe that's the problem.
Right. No, but all of the ones the names I'm referring to, they were entered. There were 75 albums that were considered.
Well, you have to enter and lobby. You can't just put them down and leave.
No, I don't think the lobbying start yet. I think it's when they choose the 5, then you can lobby.
Then what about people who know people who know people?
Well, yeah, I guess. But as I said, generally speaking, it was not for the last couple of years. I have not seen a plethora is the word of good albums to say, these are exceptional albums and they all should be there. We have seen, a 1 album and a 2 album that come up that is quite good.
What do you think about the Bob Marley soundtrack? Have you heard it, the soundtrack?
I haven't heard it. I know a few people who have made appearances on it, including Shenseea and the original Wailers themselves.
Right. So it went already?
No. I don't necessarily think so. I don't necessarily
What
think
will
so.
make you think otherwise?
Because the rumor that once a Marley is in there, it loses.
It's not Marley. It's not a Marley.
No.
It's Bob Marley.
No.
Is the name Bob Marley?
No. And it was transcribed to the other members of the Marley family. So once a Marley in there, it can't lose.
True.
I'm not going to say no.
When Marley lose?
No.
No, I'm not buying into that either. I'm just saying Bob Marley. The name Bob Marley is there. Name recognition.
No, man. But hold on.
And regardless
Bob Marley
of
never win a Grammy.
Well, since what about posthumous? What you call it? Posthumous.
No, Bob never win a Grammy.
I love the word posthumous.
Posthumously, no. Bob has never won a Grammy. So it is a stigma that is placed on his offsprings and not
on Bob himself.
No, not Gossa.
So Bob has never won a Grammy?
No.
Even?
No.
I'm going to leave it at that. Well, Bob going to win the Grammy for the first time. As a make way for Big A. I must apologize for the late ad break.
You are forgiven.
Thank you so much. Until next week. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you very much for participating and for calling in, for writing in, for texting in. We'll see you next week. The Big A is up next with the Sunday Sunshine. My name is Kabu.
This time signal is brought to you by Excelsior Community College, celebrating 50 years, honoring a legacy of achievements. The time by Excelsior Community.